recommended it along that, so if you put everyone that's underlined standard. Not the rate itself, but it's right. Everybody in the state average, county average, everything right. Are you trying to tell you that? Well, 7 is that? I think that's what Paul said. 7 maybe just 70.
All right, folks, it's actually 1 minute past the start time, so what I'd like to do is get started, if you would, please. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the Town Council meeting for Tuesday, February 1st, and I'd like to start by asking everybody to stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. And if we may have just a moment of silence, please. Thank you all very much for that. So let's move to number 2 on the agenda, adoption of the minutes of the regular meeting held on January 18th, 2022. I'll look for a motion from the council, please.
Move to adopt the minutes of January 18th.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments, councilors? Had a chance to review the minutes of the last meeting? Very well, hearing none, since we're ready to vote. All those in favor of accepting the minutes of the regular meeting held on January 18, 2022, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. The minutes have been adopted. So we shall move to number 3, presentations, congratulations, and introductions. I'll jump right in there, Catherine, unless you have anything you want to...
Go right ahead.
Okay, very well. So, what I'd like to do is ask Mr. Tim Nichols to come forward. Up here so we can all see you.
See my sweet smile.
Your pretty face.
Yeah.
So, as many of you probably know, Tim has been a councilor, mayor, deputy mayor, everything. Just about everything and anything this town.
Even white dust off the walls.
That's right. And he's been a good person to have on the other side of the aisle and on the same side of the aisle, I'll say personally. So 24 years Tim has served for this town. That's exceptional. That's a record, and I don't think it's kind of like him and Tom Brady. Kind of
the GOAT.
retired at the same time. So Tim, I'm going to call you the GOAT here across this town of Pittsfield. So we have this plaque that we have, I'd like to present to him, if I may read it now. It says, commendation from the town of Pittsfield for outstanding devotion to duty through service on the town council for 24 years, from 1997 to 2021, serving as mayor for 8 years and deputy mayor for 7 years. The town officially acknowledges Mr. Nichols' leadership, guidance, and dedication. As the longest-serving town council in Pittsfield history, Timothy P. Nichols has had a lasting positive impact on our community and his hometown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, very much.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much. Not to tie people up, but I love this town. It was a pleasure to serve here. I will tell you that, we all have our share of problems. You know, the road's kind of sucky, the weather's kind of sucky, and there's never quite enough money to go around. But at least we live in a town where people care about people. I saw it in the 70s when we had the fire, Mr. Mayor. I saw it during the flood of '87 when you had elderly women, elderly men, young kids, everybody out there sandbagging, trying to save people's houses and businesses. And I saw it during the ice storm of '98, making sure that everybody didn't freeze. And when disasters happen, the community comes together. That's why I've stayed here. My kids grew up here. 3 of my 5 grandchildren have grown up here. And it's a good place to go. You know, we got our share of problems, but at least it's not like Chicago, Illinois, where, you know, they're shooting kids in dooryards, and it's not like New York City where they're pushing people in front of trains. We have a nice community here. And I applaud all the new council members, even if you don't always agree. I'll tell you what, everybody has the same goal, and that's to make this place a better town than it was when they left it. And it's, my hat's off to each and every one of you. And as much as we have agreed and disagreed, we still have the respect enough to understand that we're all on the same page. We're just trying to get there in different ways. So, thank you, kind sir.
It's
a pleasure.
So just to let you know, my brother-in-law's from Chicago.
Oh, that'll do it. Me and my big mouth, right?
I'm pretty sure he's not watching.
Yeah.
So, Catherine has found an awesome gift that we'd like to give to you. I'll let you take a look at it.
Oh, wow.
It's a framed picture of Pittsfield.
Wow. Wow, that is so nice. Thank you very much.
It's just a minuscule item of our appreciation for what you've done for this town, and we can't put a value to it. We can't say how much you've been appreciated, and it's been an honor for me personally to serve with you, and I will call you the Oracle.
Yeah, I'm glad for you.
Thank you very much, Tim. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And
there is a box of this. Want me to send it in the box?
oh, sure. That'd be
You
great.
want me to keep it at my house?
My wife's uncle sees that, he'll have it. So I'm going to hide it where he won't see it.
I put the box up by the door.
Okay, all right, here.
Thank you.
You put that plaque right in there, Tim.
Oh, thank you very much.
Before you throw away the box, it's got little fasteners to the back.
I want to thank everybody that did this, that went into doing this. Thank you very much. And I appreciate each and every council member I've served with. And it was a pleasure to serve. And
You gonna stay for the rest of the?
Stay for a few minutes. An honor to serve each and every one of Pittsfield. Thank you.
That was the highlight of the meeting right there. So Catherine, if you would please continue.
Yes, very good.
Thank you very much.
I will be very brief regarding community and economic development activities and events. We have met with the state as well as with the town engineer regarding the Main Street Sidewalk project, and the timetable as well as the list of steps and the items that will need to be done is being compiled, so we'll have that for the next meeting. I'm also compiling an updated list on all of the funding that's going into the Main Street project from all of the federal sources, the state sources, and then the town has its match and has had it for several years now, awaiting the project. And so that will be all put together for the next council meeting after we have another meeting with the engineer. Going on to the airport grants, we had some publicity regarding the new hangar project that's coming up, and that project will be going to the planning board at the next meeting, and I'll go into that a little bit later. We have many other smaller grant opportunities, and so a list of those will be put together too. But we do have a long agenda, so we'll go on to the other items. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. So we shall move on to public hearings. Catherine, if you would, please.
Yes, very good. I will read this as...
Take a deep breath.
Yes, as fast as I can here. Ordinance 22-01, public hearing. Town of Pittsfield ordinance authorizing borrowing of up to $2,090,000. The Town of Pittsfield Town Council hereby ordains the borrowing of up to $2,090,000 to finance costs of the certain capital improvements in the town as identified herein on the following terms. 1. Pursuant to the Constitution of the State of Maine, Maine law, including Title 30A, Section 5772 of the Maine Revised Statutes as amended in the Town Charter, and all other authority thereto enabling, the Town of Pittsfield is authorized to borrow from the Maine Municipal Bond Bank, the bank, pursuant to a loan agreement between the town and the bank, or through a private banking or financing institution upon the terms and conditions mutually agreed upon by the bank and the town, subject to the limitations of this ordinance, a principal amount not to exceed $2,090,000, and to expend the proceeds thereof for one or more of the following projects. 1. Up to $1 million for the purpose of paving roads within the town and/or site preparation related to such paving. 2. Up to $600,000 for the purchase or lease purchase of a fire truck to be used by the town. 3. Up to $180,000 for the purchase or lease purchase of a dump truck to be used by the town. 4. Up to $70,000 for repairs and improvements to certain town-owned bridges and culverts. 5. Up to $60,000 for the purchase or lease purchase of a new truck to be used by the town's highway department. And 6. Up to $180,000 for the purchase or lease purchase of self-contained breathing apparatus, SCBA, equipment to be used by the town's fire department. The project. The town hereby approves and authorizes the issue, sale, and delivery to the bank or another lender as evidence of any loan and against payment thereof, the bonds of the town in a principal amount not to exceed $2,090,000 for a term not to exceed 20 years, and any notes in anticipation of such bonds and notes to be executed on behalf of the town by the town treasurer and countersigned by the mayor of the town, and to be at such interest rates, if any, as may be established by the bank for its spring 2022 issue or another lender and approved by the treasurer and the mayor, with such maturities, dates, diminutions, place of payment, paying agent and registrar, form and other terms and conditions as may be prescribed by the bank or another lender, and is approved by the treasurer and the mayor, the bonds and the notes. Such approval to be conclusively evidenced by their execution of the bonds and notes. The treasurer and mayor are hereby authorized to provide on behalf of the town that any of the bonds may be made redeemable or callable with or without premium prior to maturity. 2. The mayor, the treasurer, and other proper officials of the town be and are hereby authorized in its name and on its behalf to execute and deliver under the seal of the town, attested by the clerk, any agreements, certificates, or other documents relating to the issuance of the bonds and any notes in anticipation thereof to be in the usual and ordinary form utilized by the bank or another lender, which is hereby approved, and to contain such other terms and provisions not contrary to the general tenure hereof, as the treasurer may approve, with his approval to be conclusively evidenced by his execution thereof. The mayor, the treasurer, and other proper officials of the town be and hereby are authorized and empowered in its name and on its behalf to do or cause to be done all such acts and things as may be deemed necessary or desirable in order to effect the borrowing authorized herein. 3. The mayor and the treasurer are hereby authorized to execute and deliver on behalf of the town a loan application and other applications to the bank or any other lender as needed for approval to issue the bonds or notes. 4. The mayor and the treasurer and other municipal officers and officials of the town be and are hereby authorized in its name and on its behalf to do or cause to be done all such acts and things as may be necessary or desirable in order to effect the issuance, sale, and delivery of the bonds or notes in anticipation thereof herein above authorized, including to execute all documents and certificates as may be necessary or appropriate in connection with the sale of the bonds. 5. The town is authorized to issue general obligation bond anticipation notes in anticipation of such bonds, such notes to be signed by the town treasurer and countersigned by the mayor, and to be sealed with the seal of the town and attested by its clerk, and to be in such form and contain such terms and provisions as the officers executing the same may approve, their approval to be conclusively evidenced by their execution thereof. 6. The town covers and certifies that, as to any of the bonds and notes that are issued with the intent that interest thereon be exempt from federal income taxation, no part of the proceeds of the issue and sale of such bonds and notes authorized to be issued by the foregoing, including any notes and bonds and renewal thereof, shall be used directly or indirectly in such manner which would cause such bonds or notes of the town to be private activity bonds or arbitrage bonds within the meaning of sections 141 and 148 respectively of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as amended, the code. 7. The ordinance shall take effect 30 days after its adoption.
All right, thank you very much, Catherine. Check your pulse. Nice work, thank you.
Thank you.
So this is a public hearing. There's no motion required by the council. So let me bring up a couple things before we get into the comment section. I would ask that anyone that chooses to speak, I will start with the audience here present, and I will go to anyone on the Zoom meeting that wishes to speak on this. I would ask that the person speaking would do several things for me, state your name and your address, and keep it as brief as possible. I would say a 5-minute should be more than sufficient. We can open to questions. I certainly don't want to get into contentious debates, and I want to make sure everyone has a chance to speak. Everyone will have plenty of time to speak. So, with that stated, I will start with the audience here present. Anyone here in the audience wishes to speak on that? Anyone at all? Yes, please.
I would like to speak. My name is Joe Sally. I live at 251 Madawaska Avenue.
There you go.
And I wanted to talk for a minute. We had a similar discussion a couple of years ago. And before we look at spending that amount of money, I wanted to just point out a couple of things in relation to where our current property taxes are now, for fear of going perhaps in a direction that we don't want to. Recently, I was looking at full value tax rates, and in simplest terms, what that is it's what the tax rate in our town would be if all of the properties were valued at market value. The state of Maine puts together a list of those each year, and the data is a little bit dated. It's back to 2020 at this point, but in analyzing that data, it's a little bit disturbing to me. The town of Pittsfield is at $21.76. That's up 28 cents from a year ago, 2019 to 2020, and has gone up every year since 2007, with the exception of 1 year, 2013, where it dropped 10 cents. The state of Maine average during the same time period, where Pittsfield is at $21.76, the average in the state of Maine is $14.10. That's down from $14.59 in 2019, and has been lower each year since 2016, while Pittsfield has continued to increase. The Somerset County average for 2020 is $16.53. So That also was down 2019 to 20 and has been lower each year since 2017. When I was looking at this, I wanted to look at some comparable towns in terms of size of the town, amenities of the town, and I looked at a few in our county and some others outside of our county, and made some comparisons. And what's disturbing is if you look at this data over time, the gap between Pittsfield and the others in the county, particularly, but statewide, the gap is widening. Madison is under $20 at $19.73. Just a couple of years ago, Pittsfield, Madison, Fairfield were neck and neck, and those towns have continued to see a decline while we continue to see an increase. Fairfield is now at $19.57. Outside of our county, I looked at Dover-Foxcroft. They're at $19.17. Newport, right next to us, is at $18.50. Dexter at $18.71. I also wanted to look at some of the service center communities that are really true service center communities. Bangor is below Pittsfield at $21.33. Farmington is very much a service center community, given their location, $17.84. The city of Portland, $15.59. Just last year, the 2019 data indicated that we were 35th out of 484 organized municipalities in the state. In just 1 year, we've jumped up to a place where there are only 22 with a higher effective full value tax rate. So I guess the reason I'm here is I would like to ask the council to please put a stop to spending any further money. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate your comments. Yes.
No, go ahead.
No, ladies first, please.
So I just had a couple of questions when I was going through this
Amanda,
earlier today.
For the record, could you
Oh,
state your
sorry.
name and your
Amanda
address?
Collmore, Library Street in Pittsfield.
Thank you.
So I had a couple of questions when I was reading through this earlier today. First question is, what are we looking at for a repayment plan for this borrowing? Like, how many years is it able to be spent? And when we have that, when do the repayments begin? How much is that going to increase the tax rate over those years? And then the last question being, why are we including lease options in this when we're getting out a loan and then we have to pay interest on a lease in addition to paying interest on a loan? So those are my three questions, and I can repeat any that need to be.
Okay, Catherine, could you answer that while we're in the process here?
Yes, certainly.
Okay.
So
Thank you, Amanda.
the term, in terms of the years, is up to the town council after discussion. This is an enabling legislation which has taken all of the projects which are listed on the capital improvement plan that was approved by the town councilors at the December 21st public hearing. So rather than deal with all these issues separately, there is one enabling legislation. So this is a first step only. Each project will be looked at on its own merits as to how it should be addressed. I assume that the paving being over $1 million, which the council had approved to move forward, at least in terms of a loan, but needs to go through further steps, would go through the main municipal bond bank. And so I gave the councilors different terms of what the payments could be. We had looked at all these projects at the last town council meeting in December, and the effect of the projects, depending on how many years you put them together, we did different scenarios, is approximately $1 million. Now, the issue will be if the council goes forward with its thought that it has another bond next year, and then another bond after that. That's what the issue is. So these are the projects that were listed on the capital improvement plan, Each project will be identified for its next steps. Some projects may not go forward. The council may decide not to do all of them. Some will be lease purchase, some will be loans. But I would assume for the Maine Municipal Bond Bank, at least the paving and the bridge culvert work will go to the Maine Municipal Bond Bank, and then I have a listing of what the cost would be for that particular loan. I also did the cost of everything went to the Maine Municipal Bond Bank. I doubt that that would happen.
Did that answer at least some of your questions?
A little, but it
Okay.
brought up others.
Okay, please,
If I might.
please continue.
So I guess then my next question would be, why aren't we splitting these up so that taxpayers can look at it as, I mean, obviously all of us drive these roads. We know that infrastructure is an issue here. While I'm ready and willing to support infrastructure bonding or borrowing, I don't know that I'm willing to support a $600,000 lease under bonding. I know we need a fire truck, but I don't want to use a bond to lease something, if that makes sense. So I'm just curious, why wouldn't we just split it up so it makes it easier for us to vote on individual things?
Yep, go ahead, Councilor.
So
please.
because of the cost of the public hearings and the notices, this notice is approximately $1,200. The budget ordinances that were required to place in the papers of circulation, I know you're working on changing that law, which would be great. And then we could put things in the Rolling Thunder, for example. But at this point, we have to put items into a daily. So the cost of that budget public hearing was $1,900. It just simply is too much to spread these out and do 6 of them. So this is enabling legislation which would allow the town council on each project to decide what to do. Later on the agenda is the Maine Municipal Bond application. And I assume that we will, the council will authorize that for the paving and the bridge work. They may not authorize any other projects in there. Then each project, when it comes up, whether it's a lease or a lease purchase or a loan, would be done separately with its own agenda item, which would not require, at least in the first steps, another public hearing, which would be the ad. So everything was put together, and then there has to be other steps that will take place. If, for example, the town council decided that the fire truck would be a lease purchase, there'll have to be orders and perhaps another ordinance, depending on how it's done, that will come up later on, but it will be dealt with separately, and notice will be given. Let's say the town council decided it wasn't going to do the $60,000 little work truck, but wanted to do the $180,000, up to the $180,000 for the purchase or lease purchase of the self-contained breathing apparatus. It's likely that would be a loan and not a lease purchase. There may be a company that would have a financing company with it. So at this point, it's all up in the air, except for what will take place with the Maine Municipal Bond Bank application later on the agenda, in order for the town to be able to go to the spring issuance of the bond bank in order to do paving this summer. So just because it says bond or says lease purchase, we won't be having a bond for a lease purchase. If we had a lease purchase, it would be a separate agreement with a company, like a dealership that has a financing company. It won't be part of a bond.
So it's consolidation of all together.
Enabling legislation.
Right. Does that answer your question?
Mostly.
Is there anything else that you want to clarify?
I'll let Ben ask, and then I'll see what he has for questions.
It's not that.
No, others can go, and if I'm still confused after hearing everything.
We can circle back, as
Yeah.
Jen Psaki would say. Yes, please.
Yeah, Ben Hall, 237 Chester Street, right in Pittsfield. Following up on kind of what Joe talked to, right? Joe's the brains in here on this stuff, but he kind of highlighted to me that it got released because we looked at this last year, and so I jumped on and kind of did some similar exercises to him. And because I'm an engineer and kind of a nerd, I had to put it in some Excel, and I get some graphs and stuff too.
I am too, and I love it.
Yeah, I gotta see it. I'm a visual guy, so I'm gonna just very quickly just speak kind of two sides of my mouth a little bit, but I think you'll see what. I think I speak for most of the town when we say, we're happy to spend the money, right, and support the town and support what the town needs, as long as we see, kind of the results at the end, and to look and see we're in the top 25 of effective tax rates in 485 communities in the state of Maine, and then to look at our crumbling infrastructure, our roads and our sewers and our bridges, and I don't see I don't see where we're getting that return on the money, right? Happy to support it, happy to spend the money, and I've come to this council and asked to support spending of money of other groups before. But really challenging to take a hard look and say, what are we getting on returns for some of these investments? We have to spend money, we can't, shut things down, right, close up shop. But what are we getting in return? We've got a hole to dig ourselves out of. It's not going to happen yet this year. It's not going to happen next year. We've got a road in front of us, and we've got to dig ourselves out of a little bit of a hole here. So, with everything else you guys got to play, all the budget stuff we work on, just challenging to look at every line that we're approving, ask the questions, dig into the lines. What are we really getting on return for the money we're spending? And making sure that is benefiting, getting us back to where we need to be, right? Digging ourselves out of that hole, and it's good to hear, right, that these lines that we look at individually, we're not blanket approving all projects listed. That's good. That's nice to hear. But take a look at these numbers too, right? And I have it around. When we compare, I say, well, we can't compare ourselves to Harmon or Hamden, right? We're not Harmon, we're not Hamden, right? We could be someday, but we're not. But these numbers equalize, right? They level the playing field. So to look at some of these numbers and say that Bangor has a lower rate than we do, Hamden does, Harmon does, Fairfield, Skowhegan, Madison. I look at the infrastructure, I look at the facilities they have, and I'm frustrated. And I think I speak for a lot of the community when I say we'll work, we'll support, we put our faith in you guys, and we know we can get it done. And we're happy to support and spend the money when it benefits the community. We got to find a way to stop the bleeding and start digging ourselves out of the hole. So that's really all I had. And I'm going to come in a few months and ask you for more money. So.
So there's the alternative motive. Go ahead.
I got a question on this though. What you're not looking at is taking account of how many taxable properties are there. You see what I mean? Whereas, if you got 1,000, let's say Herman has 1,000 and we only have 400, naturally your mill rate's going to be higher.
But it's in relation to how much money you spend.
I know that, but
It's an equalized figure, so it puts everyone really on a level playing field.
You're talking economies of scale kind of thing.
right, if I got to maintain, let's say, 200 square miles, and I've only got 20 people, and Herman has got to maintain 200 square miles, and they got 100, naturally my 20 is going to pay more per mill, right?
In theory, but it ties to the mill rate that the town is committed.
What's your property, yeah. But if you had a lot more property with revenue coming in, they want to pay so less. They'll pay less, right?
No, because it's an equalized figure. It's the state valuation, which is, some towns assess.
But if you're spending, let's say both towns are spending the same amount, we're spending the same amount as Herman, and they've got more people, or more
They
property.
have more value.
Yeah, more value, more people, more
Yes.
value. Their revenue coming in, they won't have to bring in so much to get it.
Right.
So their mill rate would be lower. They could sustain a lower mill rate.
Well, yeah, they're a more valuable community.
Right. So
Yes.
that's what I'm saying. If we want to spend the same as Herman, you're going to end up having a higher mill rate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So you got to take into account.
I guess that's my question, why would we be spending the same amount of term? I mean, I get it on infrastructure and some things like that, right? But general budget total,
Right.
that our mill rate's covering, why would we be spending the same amount as a town like Herman?
I think that's his point. Is that's the challenge of
Right.
Right, but what Joe's figures show that we're spending a considerable amount more compared to the value of that town and the money that it's bringing in
That's right.
comparatively. So it's a fiscal responsibility number that's being shown
Portland has tons of
versus.
value.
Right.
It's potentially a fiscal responsibility on this.
Let's have one at a time here, please. Go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say, this statistic has been used as a measure of fiscal responsibility for generations. Lots of managers inquire about these figures. So I wanted to point it out that the trend is very disturbing, that Pittsfield is in a sharp upward, and the rest of the state, because of the growth in value, is on a decline. And to sort of piggyback on what Ben was saying, I think, most of the people in town will spend the dollars if you can see tangible results. But it's very evident that in our town, we've been spending money this didn't happen overnight. This has been this way. You can go back I looked back at data from 1991. It's been going on for a long time. But it would be nice, if we were sitting here with an effective tax rate of almost $22, we had all brand new roads and infrastructure. Okay, it takes money to do those things, but we're sitting here with crumbled infrastructure, roads that are really in poor condition, and in a place where we have to spend a bunch of money to improve those things. So, maybe it's wise to look at ways to cut elsewhere before spending more money, rather than just, if we move forward and spend $2.1 million, we're going to be in first place in the state. And that's not, you kind of joke about it, but it's not really something to be proud of.
Right. I want to move along. Thank you for your comments here. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak?
I can go first.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Amanda. You had your opportunity one time. Eric, please.
Eric Witham, live over on Nickel Street. Kind of echoing what they say, spending money is something you got to do to improve things in the town. Absolutely. Like, you can't pave a road for free. You can't fix things. You can't improve your emergency services without spending money. That stuff's just getting stupid expensive. The thing for me would be the responsible spending with it. When I read this and I saw up to $600,000 for a fire truck, the first thing that goes through my head is we have a neighboring town that just purchased a 7-year-old fire truck for $100,000. We've got another neighboring town that purchased one for $250,000. A $600,000 fire truck is a brand new fire truck. You don't need a brand new fire truck. So why would we give the wiggle room to go up that high when this town definitely needs a tanker? Don't get me wrong. I'm on a fire department. We need a tanker in this town. It's too much rural to not have it. There's no water to protect the people out there. You can go on many different sites right now and find great used apparatus that are 10 to 12 years old that all come warranted same way that a new fire truck does for $250,000. I see a line item for, $180 for SCBAs, and I see a roster of our firefighters that support this town of 12 people. So to me, we're buying 20 air packs for 12 people. That's just not responsible spending. So when you're looking at approving this type of money, $2.1 million, why are we going for the moon on it instead of respecting the people who are going to be funding it and finding the fiscally responsible way to make sure we can improve these things? I want to see the improvement in this town. I want to drive down the road and not worry about replacing my struts every 2 years. And that's not a thing right now. I want to make sure that when you're driving one of these emergency apparatus down the road, that the camber on the road isn't so bad you're afraid it's going to roll over. So you've got to spend the money for it. But I want to see it done in a responsible way, where we're not setting records on our mill rates on taxes just to get the newest, shiniest, best things necessarily, but to do it the right, scrappy, small way, because we are a small, scrappy town. We may want to be Bangor or Herman or someplace like that, but we're not. I don't want to be, personally. And it's the reason I live in a small town, right? Let's run it like a small town. Finance it like a small town. Make it so that people can afford to live here and aren't flocking away because it's cheaper to move out to another state. It's cheaper to move to a different town. How many other towns are below us? Like 400? Something like that? I've got 400 towns I can move to that'll cost me less money. They may not all have the same-ish things, but there's probably a good 150 of them that give me the same services that are in better condition than we've got in this town right now. So for me, I would just say, when you're looking to spend this money, be cautious, be scrappy. Don't shoot for the moon. Find out what your bottom dollar is, where it's still responsible and right. I'm not saying go out and buy, an 87 fire truck for $2,000 that's been sitting at a golf course pumping water for irrigating the fields, but like do the right thing on there. So just be cautious with spending this much money. You're gonna price people out, and we've got to look at running like a small town.
All set?
I am.
Thank you. Briefly, please.
I was going to note that is a very good point. Bernard Williams, our fire chief, is looking around for used and other vehicles that have been traded in, which don't have a lot of years on them. We did get a couple of good deals in which we saved a lot of money in the past. So these say to not exceed. These are the figures that were submitted by the department heads that went through multiple finance committee meetings and town council meetings and approved to remain on the capital improvement plan. It doesn't mean we're going to spend $600,000. For example, the work truck for $60,000. We've talked about just getting a used vehicle. I mean, it's going around the plow, it's just going to get beat up. So we might as well get a used one if it's possible to get one in this economy. So on those particular items in the trucks, these are items that could be used. The roads, the council has decided that it would like to fix the roads, which is good. They decided that before, but once we got to the point where we found out it was going to cost $1 million or $2 million to do this, the loans didn't happen. So then it started accumulating until 3 years ago, 2018, the council decided they were going to bite the bullet and start getting the loans in order to pay for the paving work, because they cut everything through the budget. They cut so much that there was nothing left that we could find to cut. And the budgets did go down while other items were added in. And so for a number of years we could do this, but it got to the point where we now need to get a loan because paving is no longer $33 a ton. It's $110 a ton unless you get a good deal one year like we have. So I suspect the paving, will be done at the figure that's listed. But some of the other items could be used, definitely, or deals.
All right. Thank you, Catherine.
May I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, please.
If we're going to explore looking at the used vehicles and things of that nature, and we are trying to stay a substantial amount lower, why not only approve a substantial amount lower? I can tell you personally, you can spend $600,000, $700,000, $500,000, whatever it is, I can go up to that amount. I'm going to find everything I can to pack into that amount because the money has been approved. I can spend it. And that's just the natural spending habits of people who go through, like, I get $600,000 for a fire truck. Guess what? I'm buying a brand new custom build. Because why wouldn't you? You can get up to $600,000. If you tell somebody you have $250,000, then what you're telling them is get scrappy with that $250,000, right? Hunt for it. Find the right deal. Don't settle on something just because the price tag's higher and it shines up real nice. And it gives you the ability to do that. Some of the neighboring towns that we've seen, they've been given $100,000 to find a fire truck, and you can ask some of these neighboring towns, they got $150,000, $170,000 fire trucks for $100,000 because they waited for the right deal. Because that's all they were approved for the money. If they were approved for $200,000, they would have paid $180,000, $190,000 for that truck. So my kind of follow-up to that would be, if you're already shopping for low, why would you approve the high ceiling amount when it's not in the best interest of your taxpayers?
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Okay.
Are you pointing at me?
Yes, Amanda, please.
Again, Amanda Collmore, Library Street. Just one thing that I would love to see potentially amended in this when you decide to make your decision is to really make it very clear in the language. I do see that it's for one or more of the following projects, but just really make it clear in here that in addition to maybe reconsidering amounts, to bring that, because that $2.1 million, when I saw that on this agenda, I was like, oh my God, I have to go. I canceled meetings that I had to make sure I was here, because that's a huge chunk of money. And it would have looked a lot prettier in this if I could really have seen how clear it was that it's not actually approving the spending or borrowing of $2.1 million. So if we could make that very clear in the language so that it's not assumed that we have now approved that kind of spending, I think that would make a lot of us feel much better.
Yeah, briefly, please.
So this is the legal language from the town attorney. You can see how long it is, but it covers everything. There's not one item here that the staff can go forward and do without approval from the town council. So each one of these projects has to come to the town council. Some of them will have orders, some of them will have bids attached to them. So at that point, the council can limit these, which I likely will do with a couple of used vehicles. But this is the language we've been told we need to have here so that we can deal with all the projects at once just for enabling legislation. Now, whether or not you change the amounts, these are the amounts that were approved by the Finance Committee and then the town council and put on the CIP. But the language here does need to stay this way. It does say up to. That's all it says. In the minutes underneath the discussion, we can make it clear, these details so that people, won't panic when they see it. But I would not change the enabling legislation.
Thank you, Karen. Just to clarify this, I'll jump right to you, Heather. The fact of the matter is that if any or all of these items do get passed by the council, it's not carte blanche. It's not a open check. They will go through a process. They will go through ordinances. The council will be chewing the details of each and every one as they go along. So this is not the end all. There's going to be more details that will be explored on these. So if that helps your understanding. Heather, please.
Thank you. Heather Donahue, 461 Webb Road. Just a couple things. Number one, like Catherine said, these items are all going to come before the council again. And based on conversations that I've listened to over the last several years with many of these counselors and the new counselors, the questions that they're asking, I don't think there's anybody in this room that is not going to be taking a very close look at any of the items that are being brought to either the bid process or the lease purchase process. All of those items are going to be combed over very thoroughly by your counselors. They've shown due diligence in building the budget as well as what was put on the CIP program. And so I have full confidence that, number one, our department heads are very good at looking for deals and having that scrappy New Englander mentality of what can I get. Bernard did it. We're talking about fire trucks tonight because that just happens to be the item on the agenda. But overall, that has been the approach of our department heads, is to look for those deals and try and find the best deal that they can. Does it always work out? No. Sometimes, as Jason pointed out with the trailer, it didn't work out as well as we thought it would, but based on the information that the council had that night, we made the best decision that we could. So going forward, I have confidence that the counselors are going to be looking at these items and that the department heads are going to be looking at these items because they know they are responsible to answering to the taxpayers. They are taxpayers themselves, and so I don't see any of them going out and saying, I have $600,000, I'm going to go spend it. They're going to be looking for keeping those budget items as close to the vest as possible. Personally, as someone who actually stood there and watched their house burn because there was no water available, buy the damn tanker. Buy the tanker. It's a valuable piece of equipment, whether we have a lot of rural properties and there is not water available. There are not hydrants out in the rural areas. And that is a big difference between standing there waiting for water to come, when you know that if that water was there, they could have made a big difference with it. And believe me, it's a long wait. It is a long wait. Equip your fire department with the equipment they need to do the job they need to do. They can't put out fires if they don't have water available. They can't put out fires if they can't get guys into the buildings. by the SCBA. They can't go into buildings without it. The equipment that we have is broken, it's unreliable. My dad was a fireman for 35 years. I would not want him going into a building with the equipment that we have right now. I don't want our firefighters going into the equipment that we have right now if it's not reliable. That's a lot to ask. We ask a lot of them, and our police as well. We ask a lot of them, the least we can do is give them the equipment that they need to do the job we ask for them, because they're serving all of us as well. So please keep that in mind when you're talking about budget items. You know, it can be a matter of life and death for them if things are functioning or not functioning. I'm very passionate about that, but I'll stop there. Secondly, like Catherine said before, this is the first review of bringing these items through. It's definitely not the first time that councils have seen this, and it won't be the last. The last word comes with those bid documents and accepting bids for items. And so, like I said, your counselors are going to go through that information, and they're going to be looking at it. As far as Joe's information about the tax rates, he's brought that to the council's attention before. It hasn't changed much. We're still in one of the higher tax rates. I don't know how we say stop spending money when we have people screaming at you about fix my road, fix my sewer. I have problems with my water. How do you do both? How do you keep your tax rate low and make it as low as other places when at the same time you do have those infrastructure needs? And this is the point we're at now, is the council has to make a decision. Do you actually follow through on the plans that have been put in place to make those infrastructure investments that everyone has been saying? I don't think a person has come in here and said that don't pave my road. Don't fix the sewer line out in Birchwood Terrace area. Don't fix the water line. Don't make infrastructure improvements in our pump station. So if those are the things that we're going to say are most important, and people are saying we need to cut our budget and hold our spending, what goes? The frill stuff around the edge, the recreation department, the pool. Do we say, okay, we're not going to plow until we have 4 inches of snow so that we can, cut our costs for plowing? Where do you make those other cuts? So those are just some things I want you to think about, but all of the items that you're talking about with this item are going to be seen again, and there's options on the table as far as how you finance for them, but they're all things that are needed for the infrastructure of the town. The water, the sewer, the roads, the bridges, and the fire department.
Thank you very much, Heather. Anyone else in the audience? Peter? All right, anyone online on the Zoom meeting that wishes to speak to this? Nobody at all.
I don't see anyone.
Okay,
I
you're...
will actually speak up here. I was waiting to see if anybody else was, but Nikki Steves and we are on Franklin Street here in town, and just hearing all of the feedback and comments, I wasn't prepared to speak on anything. I was just trying to be more informed, and it's actually even more confusing now. Joe gave very obvious statistics and numbers, and then brought up a few comments in regards to some things as well that are, they're right, they're definitely things that we're all talking about in town, and things like impacting our rec department or other, that's astronomically weird to me, that we're all citizens of the town, and we all pay the taxes, and we're all part of this, mill rate conversation. And the point is, I think some of us are very confused as to where it's going and why we are as high as we are, and roads aren't already fixed, and we do have infrastructure problems. This is not new, as everybody has pointed out, and so for us to be continuously talking about the infrastructure issues we have, but the rate still going up, or maintaining an incline versus maintaining what we have, or even a decline like some towns are able to do. How are the other towns able to do some of this and not continue to have an increase like we do? This is very similar to the conversation that a lot of people are talking about today. It's the day of giving for Maine Central Institute, and I think a lot of people would give more if they knew where the money was going. And so it's a very hot topic when you talk about this in a town of people who grew up here, welcome new people as new residents to raise their families here. or we grew up here and then raised our own families here. It's not changing. It's making us want to wonder how long are we going to be able to stay here and afford it. So at some point in these other towns where the mill rate is lower than ours and they're able to manage the things like infrastructure, roads, having a pool, having a rec department, they're not struggling. So we just need to be more clear, and maybe to Amanda's point, in the verbiage of what's going on, where is the money going and what are the projects and tasks at hand to where it makes sense that we're even in this situation in the first place, or projecting where we're going to be a year from now when this is all approved or not approved.
Okay, thank you, Nikki. Anyone else online? Lindsay Holmstrom?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yeah, I was just kind of just saying along the lines of what Nikki actually said. I just, thank you to Jody and everybody for talking about the question of the high tax rate, and that's definitely a concern for a lot of folks. One thing just to speak to what Heather just said about we have to do all of these things, we have to spend this money, and I think it is really important to understand a little bit more about the process of how we allocate money to projects and more, like Nikki said, of a line item approach of where is it going, because we do have a unique town, we have a lot of really special features, but the tax rate seems way, way, way high. And so I would like to, and I've been listening in for months now about the budgetary process, and it seems like sometimes things are just lumped into too big of a bucket, and you don't really get to see where are the process improvement opportunities that would lend us some cost savings as a town. A few weeks ago, or maybe it's been a month now, one of our citizens spoke up and said that there was somebody who had never received a water and sewer bill in 5 years since they lived here, and I don't know what the action item was that was taken away, but if there's even 10 or 20 citizens that have that same situation going on, we could be losing opportunities that way. So it feels like things must not be very tight in the town office in terms of budgetary and financial oversight, and I would like to see the council act on some sort of process or investigation to see how can we improve what we're doing. And if Catherine's working as many hours as she is and pretty much in, a silo or by herself on a lot of this, maybe there's things that she could use some help seeing for opportunities for either revenue or cost cutting. But anyway, that's my kind of 2 cents.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. I was going to cut you off there. I want to keep the conversations to topic. We are talking about the capital improvement of $2.09 million. I know there are discussions that we have every year on the budget. We've gone through that process, so I'd like to kind of maintain the focus on what we're talking about this evening. Catherine, you have a quick response, please?
Very quick. I will note, in reference to the budget process, the town council is very, very detailed in going through the budget. Each budget is gone through line by line. We have the background for all of that. And before the budget even gets to the town council, the finance committee goes through it and spends hours going over each figure. So there's a lot of detail on the budget, and I would encourage anyone to look at the budget book. The materials are online, and we can make a book for people. We have one in here at the office that is extensive as the new council has found, and has the information on the capital improvements in detail. So there's a lot of background and information that people go through. I won't get into the water sewer item. That's totally separate.
Not this evening.
If there is one.
At another time, thank you. That's going to be another whole topic to get into.
Thank you.
Thank you for your input there, Lindsay. Anyone else online wishes to speak? All right, very well. Seeing none, I shall close the audience input, and we'll ask the council for feedback, questions, and comments. I can open up to the floor, or we can go one by one.
Yeah, question. Can I ask Joe a question? Is it allowed during the
Yes, certainly, if he chooses to answer.
So, when I look at these stats, I agree with you. We're definitely paying our fair share of taxes, no doubt about it. I just want to understand, as a community, if you're a growing community, and say you start off in 2000 with $1 million valuation, and then in 2010 you have a $10 million valuation, valuation? I mean, you'll be able to keep a lower, it'll be perceived as a lower mill rate. Your mill rate would always go down because your population or property value is going up. Does this somehow adjust for that? Or are we seeing, or is some of this from that, but some of these communities around us are growing and we're shrinking, so are we feeling that impact, and that's why it looks like
Our state valuation is increasing.
Yep.
But our spending is outpacing.
So the town of Pittsfield is worth more money, but our spending is
outpacing our growth.
Okay.
Yes.
So when we grow, how are we growing? Is it residents, houses, or is it corporate type buildings, or is it?
In Pittsfield, it would be, there's not enough data to support a sales study of commercial and industrial properties. You know, there's most years no sales of those types of properties. So it's based on your residential sales, and in a nutshell, there's a very substantial process to this, but in a nutshell, if tax assessments are at 90% of what things are selling for, residential houses, then that residential value that the town has would be adjusted upward 10% to market value, if you will. And that's how this value is calculated. It's you have some towns that assess property. There are very few in the current market conditions, but historically there are communities that assess properties in excess of what they are selling for, and there are several others, many more normally, that assess their properties less than what they sell for. So this full value tax rate it's been equalized. It's a result of the state valuation, which is an equalized process, and it brings everyone to market value.
So one thing I want to jump in here, Joe, and thank you for the question there, is that I look at this, and yes, I see the numbers, and I see where points higher or points lower. I guess the point that I took out of it is the bigger picture, is Pittsfield on where we are in the state compared to the other municipalities in the state. We are high. Regardless of the details or the plus or minus margin of error factor, if you want to put that in there, we're still well up there. I mean, higher than the rates for Bangor Brewery, you would think would be the other way around. That's what I get out of this. You know, we can get into a discussion on where these are, how they're calculated compared to the population over the last 10 years, compared to the industries, how many people are actually residents of the town as compared to what the industries are they service industries, how much do they put into the community. There's a lot of factors that are hard to measure, as you mentioned, Joe. But what I take out of this is it kind of puts it into scale, I guess is what I'm looking at on this. So it's a very valuable table, a lot of really good information. It's kind of more of an eye opener than a discussion topic. Really.
So I'm thankful that Puritan came to town. My tax bill didn't change. What happened to Puritan's tax bill? I mean, do they pay? I mean, is there a deal where they don't have to pay taxes, or so they don't pay taxes?
No, they do.
Oh, okay.
We didn't cut a deal with them.
Sorry. So the value, so the property value goes up. I'm assuming because they invested a bunch of money there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A good chunk of that money was in the tax exempt equipment, which is, that's Joe's area again. But
Hold on. Catherine, if you want to speak to this briefly, please.
Yes, very quickly. On the Puritan project, we had high hopes, and it is a wonderful project for the employment and everything. But a lot of the portion of property is owned by the federal government, so it's not taxed. The buildings are taxed. And some personal property is taxed.
So there's the value you're going to get is what we have for the real estate and the buildings. A lot of equipment, as Ben had mentioned, that is financially untouchable for us as a town. The other thing we'll look at is that the real estate in this area has been boosted because of it. There are people now working in town. They buy lunch here in town. They buy gas here in town. So there's a lot of residuals that we look at, like we had for when the wool mill was open, when The shoe shops are open. They weren't huge, major international corporations that brought in tons of cash, but it kept people in this town working. It kept businesses in town supporting them, the gas stations, the grocery stores, and everything else. So that's what we look at. And to your point, I agree with you. I mean, the first thing I thought of, that's going to be fantastic for the town. I expected a bit more of a boost and a bit more of a bump in what we're looking at, but I think long term we're going to see something a little bit better on that. It's certainly better than the empty buildings on there. But given that the federal government had a significant role in that changed the dynamics a wee bit. Anything else, Eric? So, councilors, we had discussed this last time when we ended up our last meeting, that we're not obliged. I know there is discussion as to the amount of effort that had gone into determining what was on the ordinance, how it went through the process, how the budgets were looked at, the finance committee that had met. We can certainly entertain all. We can certainly entertain none. We can certainly entertain some. One detail I'd like to use as an example, as Eric had mentioned, 12 firefighters if they're asking for 20 SCBAs. I mean, that's $72,000 in savings at $9,000 a piece. So it's, there's no obligation there. We all understand the need. Otherwise, these items wouldn't be on the list. So that's an option that can be discussed.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Bernard.
You can certainly do that, but when you do that, you don't meet the NFPA requirements that BLS is looking at. The requirement is that you have one for each seated position.
So you have a position, you have 20 positions in the fire department, is what you're saying?
They have 20 seats in the trucks. That's what they look at.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you for that clarification, Bernard.
So if we have 20 seats, how many firefighters do we have that are, you have to be certified to wear one of those, right? So how many are qualified or certified to wear an SCBA?
Well, Eric, if you want to answer that, I guess it's relatively a moot point, because as Bernard mentioned, if we have 20 seats in our equipment that can and do respond to these fires, we're obligated by regulations to have an SCBA for each seat. So whether or not we have people to use them.
Okay, so that opens a whole different conversation. If that's the road we want to go down, how many firefighters do we have?
Well, it's not the road that we're choosing to go down. It's a road that we have to, because we cannot maintain the fire department in face of the in spite of the regulations.
Right. But so my question is this: if we have 4 trucks and we only have 10 firefighters, and I'm making this up because I don't know what the real number is. I mean, how many? If we have 4 people that can fight fires and we have 4 trucks, it doesn't make sense to have 4 trucks if we only have 4 people. So I guess we should staff. You should have the infrastructure around the truck. You should have the infrastructure around the firefighters that you have. So if you only have 4 firefighters, we should have enough trucks for 4 firefighters. If we have 20, we should have enough for 20. I guess I'm asking, I'm learning, because it's $180,000.
No, I understand. However, the dynamics, I would imagine, are a bit different for a volunteer department than a paid positions. If you had 20 paid positions, we would probably have 18 to 19 of those filled. But it's all volunteer. So I can't talk to the dynamics. I'm not involved with the fire department whatsoever. I mean, if you want to ask that question, maybe Eric or Bernard can answer that for us. Bernard, would you want to weigh in on that?
I didn't hear all the questions.
Could you repeat there, Eric?
Hey, Bernard, it's Eric. My question is this: is how many firefighters do we have right now?
Well, I guess part of the problem with this town has always been they never look forward. Not more than 3 or 4 years ago, we had a full roster of 30 people. We're down to about 16 right now. Tomorrow morning, I might get 3 applications. I have 3 that are in the works. So if you're going to go on what we have today, then that's fine, but that means we don't hire anybody else if they should come forward.
So I guess my follow-up question, is how many firefighters do we need to service this town? Can we quantify that?
Fires are you gonna have?
150.
And I'm serious when I say that. For a car fire, I can handle it with 2 or 3 people. I got a structure fire, I gotta have a whole bunch. That's why we're called mutual aid so much, because we don't have a whole bunch anymore.
Okay.
You have to have 4 people on site before you can start fighting fire. At a minimum.
How many people? 4.
Okay, thank you, Bernard. Eric?
If I just may add to that, Bernard's right. The amount of people you need to handle a call, it varies. A car fire, 4 people, if you have 2 SCBA folks, more than enough to fight a car fire. You have a car slide off the road, Bernard runs calls just as pickup truck on the interstate to check out cars that have slid off the interstate. Fire trucks don't even roll to those. You get a burning building, every community around here, just out of instinct, will dump every community out of here. Because your house, you can't throw enough bodies at it to save, especially if there's somebody in it. I would take 150, 200 firefighters on every call if they'd all listen to what they were doing, and that's probably still not enough.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Hold on. Ron, please.
Yeah, so I guess 2 questions on this. So, as part of this is to look at whether or not to include this in the bond. What is the life expectancy or the years of service for the SCBA equipment? So that'll be much of the consideration of where we include this. If those funds are approved, or if we're looking at one. And then the second piece of that is if we purchase all 20 now, that just puts us in a position where we're purchasing that same amount again when these do go out of date. Is there a way to stagger it? How many do we have now that are good for the next 5 years? Can we purchase 10 this year and still be in compliance because we have 10 that are good for the next 5 years? And
Purchase your 12 for safety.
Hold on. I want to kind of control this a little bit. Any more you want to add to that?
No, just that. Are we able to stagger it to lessen the blow?
Okay, I'm going to ask Bernard to respond to that. Bernard, did you hear the question?
I did hear it. What we have right now is 18 going on 19 years old. They are starting to break every time we use them. And the parts that are breaking on them are, of course, the most expensive. We're losing a lot of our pressure gauges, and they're quite pricey to replace, plus the cost of labor. The tanks are only good for 15 years. So at the end of 15 years, you have to start replacing tanks, which we've got some used tanks. Under the Maine state law, you must, when you purchase equipment, it must meet the current NFPA standard. Although we're not an NFPA state, but they passed a law that said for all fire equipment, it must meet the current NFPA. So that means that right now, probably next year, there will be a rewrite. Since we bought ours, they're on the 4th iteration of rewrites. With a new one, like I say, probably coming next year. So if we buy them this year, they're good for at least 15 years, depending on usage. But they should be good no matter how much we use them. They should be good for 15 years. Then you got to look at, are they a maintenance problem? And worst case or best case is you're going to have to be replacing tanks.
So, Bernard, there's no way that we would have any that we could stagger, like every 5 years go through this process, or are they all the same age that we have?
They're all the same age. We got them with a grant. The problem with staggering them is that now you've got different, you got 5 that you bought this year that are meet this standard. The next year you buy it, you got 5 that meet the next standard. And you have a training problem with all these different, because they change them just enough to be a pain as far as the guy that doesn't use them every day.
Okay. That answer your...
Yeah, it does. I have a follow-up.
Yeah, sure.
So I assume that you're saying the 4th iteration is the state of Maine's adoption of the NFPA, guidelines or rules, correct?
The state of Maine passed a law. I don't a good number of years ago that said any equipment that was bought had to meet the NFPA standard that was in place at the time.
Sure. So being familiar with the NFPA guidelines and rules, my questions, I guess, go to, are there recalls that are available for the tanks that we have already that could buy us 5 years? I know that certain DOT cylinders and flammable gas containers have a requalification period where the cost of the requalification is about a third of the price of a new tank, can be done locally and quickly, and would give us the opportunity to start to stagger, where we don't continue this trend of a full replacement every 15 years, where we're putting a large burden on the town and we're setting ourselves up for that failure. Can we set ourselves up for success with smaller purchases and lower impacts to the budget, something that can be absorbed through the annual budget versus having to take a $180,000 loan every 15 years. So that's all I was looking at. I don't want to cut your equipment. By all means, safety is the number one priority of every citizen, or should be, and if it's not, that's a problem. So we want your men going into any condition that they have to be safe, but we just need to do that responsibly. And if there are ways that we can do that while managing the budget or managing that spend over multiple years, I'd like to see that avenue followed. So that's it for me on that.
These tanks hydro tested every 5 years.
Perfect. And there's no limit to how many hydro tests that can go through, correct?
Yes, there is. The tanks are good for 15 years.
Yeah, they're fiberglass, aren't they?
No,
They are steel?
carbon fiber.
Carbon fiber.
And that kind of amazes me. These are only good 15 years, but we're building bridges, boats, planes out this stuff that they tell us last 100 years.
Well,
I think there's a little political games going on here.
Sure. Well, I know that
We're
they
on the
say.
low end of it.
I know they say a lot of like DOT cylinders are only good for 12 years, but that 12 years gives you a pressure test, and then it's a 5-year recall that it can go.
These are
So
only good. These, no matter, every 5 years we have these tested, and at the end of 15 years, they want you to put them in the dump.
okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bernard. Heather, appreciate your patience.
I was just gonna point out that, something that you just said, Ron, it goes back to what Catherine said earlier, is that some of these items are not going to be through a loan. They're going to be lease purchase. And when you're talking about a lease purchase item, which I believe this is one of the items that was looked at as lease purchase rather than being lumped into that loan, you're talking about making those smaller investments year after year. You're not talking about doing $180,000 all in 1 year. You're doing the payments over time until you pay for your equipment. So that does break it out from this larger loan. And so for some of those things, it makes sense to do it that way. The better way to do that is to go ahead and buy the tanks that you need because your equipment is breaking and it's not reliable. Get yourself into a position where you have a well-equipped fire department where everyone is safe going to work. The equipment that they're using is familiar. It doesn't matter which pack they pick up, on which truck they're in. They know how to use it. There isn't that training problem that Bernard was referring to when you have different stages and different kinds of equipment. And then through the budgeting process, say, okay, we know these tanks last 15 years. We need to put $10,000 into a reserve equipment fund for fire department funding. And that's something that's been missing from the budgeting process over the last few years. It's been started in the last 2 years because the councils have acknowledged the fact that we're getting to the point where we need a fire truck and we don't have a little kitty of savings for it. So we're looking at the $600 or the $300,000 price tag instead of, okay, we have $150,000 we've saved over the last 15 years towards this project. And now we don't have to spend the whole amount because we've been saving for it all along. And so I would encourage you to think of it in that respect and that start looking at these projects in creative ways that you can pay for them and then plan for future replacements. We know from talking to Bernard that this is going to come up again in 15 years. Apparently, they're going to age out. And they're probably going to get to the point where, and I don't know if you have this number, Bernard, about how much money we're spending on fixing these tanks every time they need to be repaired. You're going to reach a point where you're spending as much in a year to repair them as you could be making payments on new tanks. And so that's a very common thing that we tend to do, is put off all these payments because we see this big number, but at the same time, we're just paying to repair things over and over again to the point where they can't be repaired, and then we have to make that big bite.
Yeah. Thank you, Heather.
Sure, and I just to respond to that, and I agree with you that that's the type of fiscal responsibility I'm talking about, where we're putting away money, we're pulling from our current budget, we're finding ways to take that money and set it aside, versus having to come to the citizens every year to ask for loans. But I was also speaking to this gentleman Eric's comment earlier, where when we give a certain budget, we're going to spend up to that budget, and why was it approved to that number? Basically making sure that the citizens understand that we are looking at that, and why we want to dig into every single line item, and how we can work this to make the impact less on us but still achieve the same goal, which is ultimately the town that we all want to live in and think that we kind of do live in, right, on a day-to-day basis. When we talk to our friends and say, hey, Pittsfield's this, we think we're a great town. We need to keep it that way, but part of it is responsibility, and that's why I was saying that. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ron. Yeah, Brent,
I
please.
have a question more for Bernard. In his proposal there for the $600,000 fire truck, he found one roughly to get one down to $450,000, but he's looking at getting a 2,000 tanker versus we already presently have a 1,000 tanker. Is it possible to take the body off the present truck we have with a 1,000-gallon tank and putting it on? Maybe you go out there and buy a fairly new truck for $100,000. You just take the body off the one we have, because the truck, the '86 truck we have now, supposedly the frame isn't going to pass inspection. So can you take the body off the one we have and put it on like a $100,000 truck and go with that? Is that possible, Bernard?
You can do anything you want, it doesn't make any sense, because we still only have 1,000 gallons of water.
Right, but
What are you going to put on it for a pump?
what's on there now?
You can't put the pump that's on that truck now. Most likely, you can't put it onto another truck because it was built to go with the truck that it's on. It's not a PTO pump, it's an inline pump. And putting it in a newer engine in front of it, while theoretically possible, is quite expensive to try to do.
But
It's in line, as this question is, in line, directly coupled to the engine?
So directly coupled to the transmission.
Okay, gotcha. So it is kind of a PTO then?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess it is, but it's not a PTO pump as you and I would talk about.
Right,
Coming
yep.
outside the transmission.
Right, understood.
But my point is, if you can cut, I can improvise quite a bit for saving $200,000-$300,000.
Yep.
And you probably could get a truck for $100,000 pretty good.
So, Bernard, I have a question for you, if you would, please. So, we hadn't mentioned anything about specifically the tanker, a 2,000 as compared to a 1,000 gallon. Is it the fact that you want to go to 2,000, or is it just the truck itself, and while you're at it, maybe we can get a 2,000 gallon?
Well,
I don't mean to sound facetious, but I just want clarification.
Well, we had a tanker, a separate tanker, and that died of old age. It was never replaced. So by going to a 2,000 gallons, the difference between a 1 and 2,000 gallons is quite a lot if you're out here away from the hydrants, when you're waiting for surrounding tankers to show up. It gives us an extra 1,000 gallons. The truck itself would be, rather than be a custom, would be mounted on a commercial chassis, most likely a Freightliner, with a PTO pump. We would not lose. We would get credit for a tanker and an engine by putting ladders on it in the hose bed. So you gain a little on the ISO rating, and you save $150,000 on the price to go in it.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Brian?
No.
Anything else from the council? Thank you, Brandon. Nothing else, council?
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Kathy, have we gone out to private banks to see if we can borrow money at a similar rate as with the main bond bank?
I did some discussions with banks. $1 million is a lot for the town to borrow through a commercial bank, or $2 million. So basically, the bond bank is the best place to go for at least the paving part. The interest rates are comparable, but they are higher through the local banks, but they're still very low compared to the loans that we've gotten in the past. I mean, if you're going to borrow money, and I'm not one that likes loans, but if you're going to borrow money for some projects, now is the time to do it, because the interest rates are projected to go up. So yes, I did talk to the commercial banks. It would be higher than the bond bank. But right now, you haven't decided that all of this is going to the bond bank. It could go to a commercial bank. It could go with a financing entity for a fire truck company. So each one's going to be looked at separately later on the agenda, due to the fact that the bond bank application is due for the spring issuance next week. We're going to have to decide on what is going to the bond bank later on. I doubt all these projects are going. It wouldn't make sense, because likely you would borrow money for 15 or 20 years, and you wouldn't do that for some of these items. So yes, private sector banks, the rates are higher than the bond bank at this time.
Anything else, council?
I just want to follow that up
Yeah.
if I could. With the commercial banks, the term restrictions, I know with the main bond bank, there's no ability to make principal payments until we're 10 years into the loan. So we're stuck with that loan for 10 years. Should we decide to pay it off? Should we find ourselves with budget surplus where we'd like to make that payment and reduce that impact? So do the commercial banks have that same restriction? And if so, what's their term before you can start making principal payments?
So I did check with the Maine Municipal Bond Bank, and now there's no prepayment whatsoever, because communities were pulling out and going around and taking the money out. So if you get a 20-year issuance for $1 million, you got to make all your payments, and that's it. On the commercial banks, it will depend on when we put our RFP together. We always put in that prepayment is allowed, and then the banks have to allow it if they're going to bid on it.
Sure.
If they didn't and they said no prepayment, then they would not be meeting the bid specs.
Sure.
So if we, for clarification, if we did, let's say, get $2 million through the main bond bank, and we end up using 1.5, so we could not, according to them, take that $500,000 and pay it back in to shorten the loan or reduce the rates.
That would be correct. That's why we wouldn't go to the bond bank for the whole projects, all the projects for $2 million. The interest rate is better, but you're stuck. In terms of the bond bank, and let's say the fire truck came in at $450,000, because Bernard was talking about trying to reduce it to that amount if possible, then the bond bank doesn't care if we spend the money on something else, but we cannot prepay back. So that $150,000 could be paid on something else. We would likely have to amend the ordinance to move it over to paving or to move it over to something else entirely different.
Okay, something to consider, council. So anything else from the council? All right, very good. So discussion is over. I will look for a motion to act upon the ordinance.
Well, are we gonna go through the options?
That's what I'm asking for.
Well, I thought we were gonna go through the options.
No, we can, it's wide open. I mentioned before, if you want to go through the options, if you want to do it wholesale, if you want to do it none, you want to pick and choose.
I'd like to go through the
Yeah,
options.
absolutely. Let's have that discussion then, absolutely.
All right, I got my recommendation. I'd recommend going right now with the road, the culvert, and the SCBA. The others, I think we need to do a little more homework and dig into options a little deeper and then come up with what we want to try to borrow for that.
So with the roads, that's 1 million. The culverts, bridge rebuilds, that's 70,000. And you have SCBA's at 180.
The only other comment I'd like to make is,
1.25 million.
that if we're gonna look ahead down the road, and we have that, our paving plan there, again, if you see that's like 14 or 15 million dollars that needs to happen in order to bring the roads back up. So if you're doing it at $1 million a year, again, you're 15 years out. By that time, you're gonna almost start doing them again. And if you keep borrowing money, even at 1.2 here, within 2 or 3 years, no matter what, if you want to borrow $1 million every year, you're going to be up to a mill rate, minimum, but not a mill rate. So every 3 years, you're going to increase the mill rate. And let's say the average house in this town is $150,000, just an average. So everybody's property tax is going to go up $150 every 3 years, minimum. And people ain't gonna like that.
Well, as was mentioned, Heather mentioned it, and I've experienced that for many years, that we weren't putting money into a kitty. We weren't putting money into a fire kitty. We weren't putting money into the highways and roads. I mean, we had talked about it 2017, 2018.
Every year.
It was painful. We had it in that budget for that year, but circumstances the way they were, no one counted on the pandemic and everything that happened. They had to reconsider that the following budget. So there's a lot of what ifs, and yeah, maybe we could have, maybe we should have, but so that's one of the discussions that we as a council, I'd like to have this coming fall on how we look at it, and it's the one part of being a council that's always painful, no matter how many times you do it.
Well, the other thing is, if you look at it, and those who went through the budget with us, if you think you're going to take out $1 million out of the present budget to pay for the road, I didn't see no magic wand that says you can do that. So,
There's one thing I want to throw in here. It's probably not very specific to this, but talking about the budget aspects, you're familiar with what's his name, Welch, with GE. The guy used to run GE for years. Every year he would demand 5% back on every budget, every year, from all the contractors, all their customers. 5% back every year. And they struggled, but they did it. They got to a certain point where they were lean and mean, but they were still operating. We may need to consider that here, because it's something that's going to be taken care of. So your discussion, Brent, you would propose we look at the paving for $1 million, the project, the bridge and culverts rebuild for $70,000, and the SCBA with tanks at 180. My quick calculations have it at 1.25 million on that. Anything you want to add? Anything you want to expound more?
to fix the roads, again, right now, it's probably the lowest interest rate you'll ever see. Right? So, I hate to...
Yeah, the highest energy costs.
rate. Yeah, I know.
The input costs are
What kind of
astronomical
cost?
right now.
Lock in the rate.
Yeah.
Invest the money, don't spend it.
So
I like Brent's idea last meeting, was perfect. You borrow the $1 million at 2%, and you invest it, make 10, and then you pay for your roads eventually. Okay, I like that idea better.
what is the required start date if you purchase the money? Is there a requirement on that, or like does the project have to
Captain,
be?
is there a requirement for the start on that? Are we obliged?
You have to spend it within 1 year?
No, absolutely not. It would be, you'd have to make a good faith effort for your project, which you would, because your paving is going to, if you want to do it this summer, we're going to have to put the bid specs out in April, have the list of the roads that you decide upon from the paving plan, and then go forward.
Sure.
So that it's done by fall. So you would be spending most of the money if you borrowed $1.25 million.
Yeah, we could. However, to Ron's point, we could say, well, let's look at one of these two of these roads for this amount, keep that for the budget for next year, because we're making payments on it regardless. For 10 or 20 years, we have to make payments. We can't pay it off early. And then we can start, maybe next year be a little cheaper. If we've got the $1 million, there's no obligation. That $1 million goes this fiscal year, bang, done, and we're in and out.
That would be true.
Because as much to the point that the interest rates are at historical lows right now, asphalt rising rate was approved and it's at a historical high right now. And that is, we're at a position where we're paying double for what we're getting. Even though we're paying less on it at the end, we're still paying double. So 2% on double is still more than 3% on or 3.5% on.
And honestly, before crude went up, interest rates were still low.
That's correct.
You know what I mean, interest rates been low for a long time. That's not new. I was building my house 8 years ago, and it's a low interest rate. It's just.
We're on the council session very briefly.
I
Heather,
actually
please.
have a process question for Catherine. You had said earlier that this is the enabling legislation for borrowing up to 2.9 or 2,900,000. Brent had made a suggestion, or maybe it was a full motion that didn't have a second, to adjust that amount. If you were to take that action as a council tonight, does that mean the other items that are in here, the fire truck, is that the only one that's getting left out?
The dump truck.
And the
The
plow truck,
truck,
right
the
there
plow.
on the next page. Those items would then have to come back to a different ordinance, to a different public hearing for a different ordinance, which would be another publicizing, another $1,900 that you would be spending to do all the announcements and everything.
Well, actually, no, we would just push them to the wayside. Why, we have no obligation to address those.
I wouldn't change the ordinance, I would just leave it on the books, and then you do the projects that you want. If you cut them out now, you'll have to bring, let's say you decide you want to do all three later or two, you're going to have to head back with the ordinance, the public hearing again. Public hearing's fine, if the cost is the public hearing notices, which is why this was all put together, rather than have 6 of these at $1,200 each and no budget left in that line item for everything else, and we'll just have to make adjustments. You're doing it all at once to save money.
But if we have no intention on or desire to fund those 3 items, that makes no sense.
So I guess that was my question, was whether the council was making the decision tonight not to address those other items that are on the capital improvement plan, or leave the item as it is, and then you have the option of addressing that if the fire chief is able to find a fire truck that is used for $300,000. It gives the council the option later on of saying, we have a lease purchase option for this. Do we want to act upon it based on new information?
Right, but
Because if it's
that would
left
apply
out-
just to a bond for $2.09 million, which we have no desire to do that.
No, we
If
can,
we choose
you
not
can
to.
borrow up to. So you can approve this item this evening as written, and then as Brent said, have your bond through the bond bank just be for those items that you want to address that, and leave those other items. You've already approved going and getting financing for them, but you have not delineated where to borrow that financing from, and it gives you the option of addressing those items later in the year when something like a used fire truck pops up, because you never know what's going to happen. If you don't do that tonight and you cut them out of the option
Okay,
completely,
thank you.
we'll close off that option.
Thank you,
of
Heather.
addressing it.
The clarification I would ask from you then, if we decide, as Brent has suggested, there has been no official motion yet, for those 3 items at $1.25 million, if that's the decision of the council, how could we go back and entertain the idea of the other 3 items? We'd have to go back and get another bond for that.
Or you would do the lease purchases. The bond bank would have another issue.
But no, I guess my point is, if we have 1.25 that if we tentatively agree for 1.25 million for 3 of those line items, why would we keep those other 3 in there if we have no intention on this bond to pay for them, to finance them?
Because this is to use a bond if you desire through the bond bank. which could be just the 1.25 million or $1,070,000. So the bond bank application can just be a part of this. The other items can be done, lease purchase. You could put out an issuance RFP to the banks for the dump truck if you wanted. So you can divide these all up. All this is grouping them together so that there's one public hearing, one discussion, but most of all, one advertising fee. So let's say you decide, well, we're not going to do anything. We're going to wait for the fire truck, see if the fire chief can come up with something. It happens in September, and then you've got your enabling legislation. And let's say he found a fire truck for $300,000. That's great.
But we're going to the bond bank for 1.25 for only 3 items.
Well,
It's not like we have money laying around and we're going to get the full $2 million.
Well, we're not going to, because all this is enabling legislation for the bond bank or a commercial lender or a bank.
Okay,
or
so
financing.
I guess we would need clarification. So if we do get the 1.25 as suggested, Brent, the clarification is it is for these 3 items.
Yes.
If you wish to keep the other 3 in there for documentation's sake, I guess I don't understand that process, and that's fine.
Yeah,
But as long as there's clarification that if it's the council's will to do that, then that's what we will denote.
So what you would do is put that not only under the public hearing, but when the main municipal bond bank application later on comes up, we state exactly, we're going to the bond bank for up to $1,250,000 fee for the project. And then that's it.
Perfect. Yes, Ron?
Okay, so I think that kind of clarified it, but my concern to Heather's point would be that to move that item forward in its entirety would basically say that I'm complicit with potentially or eventually spending that amount of money. And to be honest with you, I can say that at this moment I'm not. That because in order to take the loan 6 months from now, why would we not have to have the public hearing again? Because it's going to be a completely separate issue.
Right.
And for me, for the point in time that we would entertain that, we would have saved greater than $1,200, because the hang up that we're arguing over on a new fire truck or on a dump truck at $600,000 versus $250,000, I could swallow spending $1,200 for an additional advertising piece for the new ordinance and public hearing. I guess that's kind of my thought process. So, for the confidence of the citizens of the town of Pittsfield, and to Eric's point earlier, understanding why we would move that amount forward if we don't have the intention of spending that amount, then I would say that we should, break this. My suggestion would be to break this to the point that we feel comfortable as the council spending and feel comfortable being responsible to our constituents spending, and that would be it. And we would address that at a later date. I mean, $1,200 is not going to break the town of Pittsfield.
However, it needs to be detailed for the bond bank's
Sure.
satisfaction, very briefly.
Yeah, very briefly, let's say we decide to go to the bond bank, and so let's say you pass this as is. Then you decide later on the agenda to go to the bond bank. We state it's for 3 projects, 1.25 million, if they'll include the SCBA. If they won't, then it'll be $1,070,000. So then we have the enabling legislation on the record, and what we found in the past is that all of a sudden the fire chief will find a vehicle. And this happened twice. He found a vehicle for a really good deal, and we had no enabling legislation. So we had to rush all around, have all these emergency meetings, and we were in jeopardy of losing one of the vehicles, and luckily we were able to talk them into the fact that in 2 weeks we were doing this. It goes into effect 30 days later, and they went with us, and the fire truck company agreed to hold that truck. So this just gives us the enabling legislation up to that amount. If you want to change the amount and say it's $400,000, you can do that.
That was going to be my follow-up question. Can we amend the amount that we would feel comfortable moving forward with tonight? Because I think I've heard pretty much it's a non-starter at $600,000 across the board here, for the fire truck. I think that's pretty much.
It's apparently how it's worded in,
Sure.
through the bond bank. I
Sure.
just want to make sure that we
I
clarify
mean,
that. Thank you for that.
absolutely everything that's on here would have to get approved by us again anyway, so.
It's not twice.
Right.
So if Bernard comes back to us with a fire truck that's 600,000, we can just tell him no, that we're not going forward with it. We don't want to buy it for 600,000, find one for 400,000. And then he goes out and finds one for 400,000, and we approve that and we go with that one. Nothing saying that these numbers are what we're all going to see every one of these line items again. This is just kind of giving us an easier avenue to approve it in a quicker manner.
I guess the point I wanted to clarify with council is that, do we want to put ourselves initially on the hook for 2.09 million? Where we, where the thought is maybe we don't want all 6 on there at this point. I mean,
Right, but it comes back to us again
Multiple times.
to do exactly what Brett said.
We can go hook.
Huh?
You're not really on the hook.
You're not on the hook at all.
The audience input is closed. I'm sorry. It's council now.
So what he said, we're not on the hook for it. It's not. We're not taking out a loan right now or a bond right now for $2 million. We're just approving that we could go up to it, which quite clearly we won't go up to it. But it's just giving us the capability to do so.
So to clarify your point, if we made a motion, correct me if I'm wrong, made a motion to continue this as is.
Right.
When we get to these individual items, each one we may whittle down, or we may approve, we may get rid of.
Half of them I probably won't approve either. So, but tonight I would be willing to say, yes, okay, we'll move forward with this $2 million, and then my future votes to a $600,000 fire truck will maybe be no.
Understood.
But, it's just
Okay, I understand. You were on the finance committee when you were going through this, okay.
Yep.
All right, does that help you a little bit? It does me.
Well, my question is, will we go on the hook for the 2 million something right now? And then later on, we could shift it and say we want to put 1.5 on the roads, right? We could change whether we want to, by the time you officially make the request. Right? Could you shift that?
Well, like she said, if we have 600 in there for a fire truck, and we find that we can get a decent one for 300, there's 300,000 left that we can't use it for other projects, we'd have to go through an approval process, and we can't use that to pay back the loan.
the verbiage here is up to $1 million
Yes,
each
for
individual.
the paving and up
Yeah.
to 600,000 for this and that.
Now, we would have to go through a process to say, get approval, if we didn't use it with us, maybe we use it on this, something that's still within the description of the bond.
Right.
I mean, we can't say, hey, let's put in a new sidewalk or streetlights. We can't do that. That has to be the way they process that. So the point that Jason is making is that we approve the ordinance 20-2201 as is. That doesn't mean that we right now expect to spend $2,090,000 for each one of these.
Correct.
Because they each will go through a process. We would expect the plow, the truck, we would expect SCBA's, the fire truck, all the proposals, all the details we need. And at that point, we would say, well, that sounds good, here's your blessing, or no, we can't do that, or how about we do it for this much, or, that's where we're gonna get into the nitty gritty. That provided clarification for me on that too, thank you. Is that?
So Brent's item on the three items can be part of a motion later on when we go to the bond bank.
Right, after this evening,
this one.
okay. Anything else, council?
No, I was going to say, that would be my concern with the bond bank, is if it's a 20-year mandatory where we have to make every payment, and they've eliminated the 10-year, the SCBA equipment doesn't make sense for the bond
Right,
bank.
we're not blessing $2 million tonight. We're not saying, okay, go to the bank and get $2 million.
Right. No, I
We're
got it.
saying, up to that point, we're willing to have those discussions.
Right.
That's
No, it
what
just
we're making
made
to this evening.
Right, because the SCBA equipment, I wouldn't pay for a car after I sold it. I wouldn't continue to make payments.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. We have to find an alternate method for at least that piece if we're going to approve that. But yeah,
No, that's fine. I have,
You still have to determine whether you go 10, 15, or 20 though, right?
Yes, correct.
yeah,
When we
that'll
get to
be
that
part of that
item.
discussion also.
Later on.
Yes.
Yes, later on the agenda.
All right.
So, a motion that could be made to accept ordinance 2201 as is, knowing that there are discussions to be had at a later date. That's one motion that can be made, or you can table it, or you can have other discussions. Whatever council's comfortable with at this point.
I'll make a motion we accept ordinance 2201 as is.
Second. Moved and seconded. Thank you, gentlemen. Technically, we'll go to discussion on that. I will keep it at the council. We've had the open audience input on that. Anything, council? Very well. Hearing none, I feel we're ready to go to a vote. All those in favor of moving ordinance 22-01 as written, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Ordinance 22-01 passes. Thank you very much, council, audience. Thank you very much for your input. Catherine, if we let's go on to reports. Council committees, any reports from the Finance Committee?
We haven't met.
Very well. Any from the Ordinance Committee?
Haven't met.
Very well. Recycling Committee?
No.
Very well. Thank you very much on that. Board and committee updates by town council and manager. Catherine?
There will be some at the next meeting.
Very well. Let's move on to the town manager report, please, if you can go through that. Highlights?
Very good. A copy of the town manager's report for February 1st is on the table for the audience. Also, the council will have a copy of it. So basically, very quickly, number one, the main online burn permits became free of charge, and these are available at mainburnpermit.com. Number two, the 2022 transfer station stickers are available. They are being enforced, so make sure you have your new sticker when you go to the transfer station. Number three, the 2022 dog licenses. All dogs over 6 months old have to be registered prior to January 31st. So unfortunately, it is February 1st. There is a $25 late fee per animal license as a requirement of the state of Maine. We have tried to not charge that and been instructed by the state to do so. So we apologize, however, there is a fee now. Online services, go to www.pittsfield.org. There's a whole section on items that can be done online. Online council materials to make sure that everybody knows what the town council packages are. You go to www.pittsfield.org, go to the right-hand side of the town website underneath the picture, click on government services, then click on town council, which is the first item under the government services. Go to town council packages, and then 2022 council packages will pop right up, and the whole package is there. I just would caution you to look and see how many pages there are, because sometimes they are longer. And then click on the pages that you actually want to print out. Number 6, think of the reuse center when you're downsizing or cleaning out your home. You contact the town office or the transfer station to make an appointment for those services. All right, current and upcoming activities. We have a public hearing to be added to the agenda of the evening's meeting on an economic development item. And so the councilors have copies of that materials, as well as the public has a copy on the table if they would like it. An item of importance was mentioned last Friday by a business in the community as the company had been notified of a title issue on a potential purchase here in town. This was a mystery and we had to solve exactly what had taken place. But basically, this will require adding an item to the agenda this evening to schedule a public hearing. The town does not add items to the agenda due to the filing deadlines, as well as the fact the public would not have proper notice. So in this particular case, it is very different from all these other items that people will ask to have added to the agenda. It is not a final agency action. We would simply be scheduling a public hearing to the next town council meeting, so we actually will be allowing public input. So this will fit in with our rules. And so The item that would be added to the agenda this evening is an action to schedule a public hearing for notice to the public, and the town council will not be taking final action tonight, so it is appropriate under the town council rules. Chimbro would like to close as soon as possible to purchase the former Pittsfield woolen mill. And during the title search, a tiny parcel of land was found in the middle of the property that abuts the building. And-
Catherine, why don't we do that when we talk
Okay.
about this ordinance,
All right,
go through
good.
that all again?
I
Because
figured
we have a
so.
gentleman here that will give us a brief presentation on that. Thank you.
All right, very good. So we'll skip over that one. There's two actions to do. Still looking under number 8, seeking citizens for the Community Development Advisory Committee for oversight of the Main Street sidewalk project. Remember, this project is going to be starting up shortly with construction going out to bid at the end of the year for the state of Maine, and we'll be piggybacking on with that. Number 9, the airport hangar apron and taxiway project. The town, through its airport engineer and myself, will be presenting before the planning board at their regular scheduled meeting on Monday, February 14th. The meeting begins at 7 o'clock p.m. People can attend in person or by Zoom. Number 10, the railroad quiet zone. We do not have the whistle being blown at the Main Street crossing due to how densely populated the area is. And back in 2005, the quiet zone was requested because the engine was going through so many times, it was quite loud. At the other railroad crossings, we do have the train whistle blowing, simply because we don't have the same nice setup at the Main Street one at the other locations, and they're not as densely populated. So, to make a long story short, we did reapply for that. Number 11, the 2019 tax liens did foreclose on Friday, January 23rd. Unfortunately, there are 6 new properties added to the town's tax rolls, properties that we do not want to own. There is a redemption process under the tax-acquired property policy in which we contact the individuals. They would not just pay up the 2019 taxes, which they could have done by that foreclosure date or on that date. They now have to pay 2019, 20, 21, and 22 taxes if after April 1st of the year. And so this is unfortunate. However, this is what would need to be done. So we'll go through the tax-acquired property policy procedures, contact the individuals, and then hopefully some will be able to redeem the property. If not, then the properties will be reviewed to go out to tax-acquired property bid. There's a meeting that would be required with the planning board to see if any property should be retained. Of the 6 properties, 4 have dwellings of some nature on them, and 2 are parcels of land. There is a couple of assessing issues with a couple of the properties, so 2 of them may not be able to proceed forward. We may need to mitigate them. There were some assessing errors.
Catherine,
yes.
can we just do the highlights?
Okay, all right. Those were the highlights. So, code enforcement, you can read the information under number 13. There are 4 updates from the town attorney on which properties should go forward to a public hearing for dangerous building, and the rest are updates on what should be done, so the council can read that. And so that's good to have the information. Looking for board and committee positions. A listing is on the town website and has been publicized, especially looking for the planning board, because that is a very important board, and people have moved out of town or retired. And we do have a candidate for the recreation director's position, and 2 people came in today that said they were going to file applications too. So very good, thank you.
All right, thank you, Catherine. So we'll move on to new business. First order, as Catherine had mentioned, there's a ordinance 22-02. The council should have a copy of that. It has to do with the ownership of transfer of the old woolen mill and the issue with that. So to be able to set the public hearing for the next meeting on February 15th, if councils have a copy of that, I will look for a motion to waive the town council rules to add ordinance 2202 to schedule public hearing to agenda.
I'm going to waive the ordinance to town council rules to add this to the agenda.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion with that, council?
Very good. Since we're ready to vote, all those in favor of the motion to add ordinance 22-02 to the meeting this evening for public hearing on the next meeting, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Ordinance 22-02 is on the agenda. Catherine, if you wanted to read through that, please, as a normal scheduled ordinance.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
Ordinance 22-2, set for public hearing February 15, 2022. The town of Pittsfield hereby ordains to transfer back to Pittsfield Woolen Yards Company, Inc., a parcel of land transferred to the town September 2nd, 1997 by Pittsfield Woolen Yards Company, Inc., by quitclaim deed in Somerset County Registry of Deeds, Book 2349, page 226 to 227, and further shown as parcels free on a standard boundary survey plan for Pittsfield Woolen Yarns Company, Inc., dated June 30th, 1997, prepared by G.B. Robinson Surveyors. Said property was part of a land transfer and is no longer needed as the business has closed. In order to clear up the title and facilitate sale of the property for development, and having determined that the 1,184 square foot parcel has no use for the town council has determined that the property will be transferred back to Pittsfield Woolen Yarns Company, Inc. The town council further authorizes the town manager to execute a municipal quitclaim deed releasing the town's interest in said property to Pittsfield Woolen Yarns Company, Inc.
All right, thank you, Catherine. I'll look for a motion from the council, please.
Make a motion to adopt ordinance 22-02.
I'll second.
All right, moved and seconded. So the discussion, I will ask for input. However, as gentleman here, Representative Chimbrow, if you could stand up, introduce yourself, and if you want to go through a few details for us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hi, my name is Paul Doobie. I am the properties manager for Chimbrow, and we are in the process. We have engaged in a purchase and sale agreement with the principals of the former Wright Mill, or the Pittsfield Woolen Yarns Company, I guess it was called. And during the course of Fred Bacharach doing the title search, it was discovered that there's a parcel of land, 1,184 square feet, I believe, roughly the size of this room, that exists in the middle of the parcel that was swapped in 1997. And for some reason, the belief is that it was to resolve an issue of encroachment along Central Street by the building that was built, the metal structure. So a land swap was transacted with the town, where the Pittsfield Woolen Yards took possession of the property along Central Street in exchange for this parcel of approximately equal size. However, the surveyor's notes, which are on page 2 of this document, looks like this. Mr. Roberson gave us his notes and said, I was tasked with finding an equivalent sized parcel of no particular location, and the location was selected randomly. So here we are. We found this piece of land in the middle of the parcel, no easement, no right of way. And fast forward the tape to today, as we look to purchase this property, our intention would be to demolish the back wooden structure. So that's kind of this structure has existed for a very long time. It's very old. There's some abatement work that needs to happen in there with asbestos and some other things, which we're going to clean up. Sometimes there's vandalism that go on in this building. It's a little bit unsafe. So we'd like to take that down, and eventually we will add on to the metal structure with a similar type construction on the backside and use this as a warehouse. So in doing so, if we are to follow the front of the building as it exists now, this parcel in question is squarely in the way of our development plan. So while we certainly expect to do some renovation work, we would want to do that with a similar expectation on property that would be owned wholly by the company and transferred through the purchase and sale from Pittsfield Woolen Yards.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Always an interesting story. I'm still stymied as to why they chose that one. Actually, I was looking on this paper for a little hole where they thrown the dart. That makes just about as much sense, I guess.
It does.
So, anybody in the audience have any questions or comments on this? Anyone online?
So we are scheduling it for public hearing on.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. Yep. Council, any questions or comments on that? Yeah, right, and to reiterate what Catherine said, this is voting to move it to a public hearing on the very next meeting, February 15th. Why we had this as a last minute and we waived the rules, put it on the agenda tonight, because there's a time frame that we would normally follow to put these to a public hearing. Both Chimbro and the current owner of the property are very interested in getting this done as soon as possible, and I think the town would do well to help, improve the time for that. That'll improve that property greatly. I've lived on that corner for almost 28 years, so I've seen a lot of stuff happening there, and that building is, the wooding part is surprising that it's still standing. And if the walls could talk, it'd be kind of scary. So that's where we are on this. So anything else there, Council? All right, very good. So hearing none, we're going to vote on setting ordinance 2202 to a public hearing on February 15th. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Ordinance 2202 will be set to public hearing on the next town council meeting on February 15th. Thank you all very much. Paul, thank you very much for your time. Greatly appreciated it.
Thank you very much.
Catherine, for getting us on so quickly as you
Yes,
did.
you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Good.
So if we go to resolution 2216, please.
Resolution 22-16, resolve that the town council authorize the town manager to submit a financial application for general obligation borrowers, long-term bond for capital improvement plan projects to the Maine Municipal Bond Bank.
Look for a motion from council, please.
Move that we adopt resolution 2216 as written.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion, questions or comments? Anyone in the audience? Before we get to that, Catherine, could you provide a little clarification on that?
Yes, so on
Please.
this particular item, because the bond bank application is due on February 9th, we needed to place it on the agenda in order to be on the spring issuance, in order to do paving if you chose to go forward. We would want to do the paving during the summer rather than attempting to borrow money as temporary, like a TAN, temporary loan, to then wait for the money to come in from the bond bank later in the year. So this is where you would decide on what your project would be, which you had a lot of discussion on, and the term. And so the council had received, and on the website, financial estimates using the Maine Municipal Bond Bank and local bank estimates only. And so there were different models in there for if we borrowed $1,070,000 for 15 years, this is what the estimated rate is. And again, it's only estimates, it could be totally different. But the estimates that we got from the bond bank and from the local banks as of this moment in time, or as of last week. If we borrowed the $1,070,000 for 20 years, if we borrowed $1.2 million for 10 years, for 15 years, 20 years, so you would decide on what your projects are, and we have the best information that we will have available. But I would assume that you would not put the work truck in for $60,000. You would not put the public works truck in for up to $180,000. Those could be lease purchases. The SCBA is probably going to be a loan and not lease purchase. Bernard is looking for a lease purchase. He hasn't found anything yet. There could be one. You have talked about getting more information on the fire truck. I wouldn't see that in there. So I think what Councilor Frost had mentioned are probably the projects that would be the best for the town.
So for clarification on this, if you would please, Catherine, resolution 2216, are we expected a number to tack to this resolution And that's a number
Yes.
that we
Yes.
would, okay. So actually, we do not have the discussion of the other items specifically. If we put in $2,090,000 as per the original request, what obligation is there? I mean, if we did that like a placeholder, if you will, can we later on go back and say, no, we only want the 1.25? We have to have a number this evening. And that's kind of the follow-up of what I asked before. If we're going to get, at this point, look at 1.25 million, it makes absolutely no sense to even consider the other three items that were on it, but I understand that as a documentation requirement.
But the other three items could be considered later on if you chose to do so as well.
Right. I understand that now, but we have to go through this process again and get another, 900,000 and some change, whatever it works out to be. To get the total
Either
2 million.
together or separately, likely separately. So, for the Maine Municipal Bond Bank, the application will get filed on February 9th. So, the issue this evening is what projects would we like to have an actual loan on? It makes sense at the low rates that we would have the paving included, because that is a 15 or 20 year or even more for us. So it's being financed properly. The SCBA can only go to 15 years, just because that's the time frame that Bernard has mentioned that it's good for. So you can't borrow for longer than your proper lifespan of an item. We can put it in there if you'd like, and then see how things go. There'll be a date that will be set after the March meeting of the bond bank in which we can't change the figures. So if you put in, let's say, $1,250,000 and you decide, no, we're not going to put the SCBA in, there will be a date that's set by the bond bank after the March meeting in which we can't change anything at that point.
What would that date be?
That's up to the bond bank, and it has not been set yet. But
That kind of limits our options.
well, likely it would be in April, I would think, the end of March, beginning of April. So you have like a month to look around for different things.
So, to the council, in the package that we have on page 30, 31, and 32, we have a breakout of 1.25 million based on the paving the bridges SCBA tanks on a 10-year, a 15-year, and a 20-year loan. Now, there are other options that were presented here. We have 1.52 for paving bridges, the fire truck, based over certain years. I mean, those aren't our only options. However, the numbers that we have here were very similar to what had already been discussed or been brought up as part of the discussion by Councilor Frost. So just for my edification, if we, whatever number we decide with this resolution 22-16, that will be the number that we would go to the bond bank, as you said, it needs to be in by February 9th.
Yes, February 9th, then bond bank has a meeting on March 16th. I would say, because it indicates on April 6th is the last date for signing school contracts and PUC approvals, I would say April 6th is likely the date that you cannot make any changes as of after that date.
So we can put in an application by the 9th, yet we can change it up until some date in April.
Yeah.
A date we don't know yet because the bond bank hasn't set it.
Correct.
So is the council thoroughly confused now?
Likely you wouldn't change it, so you want to put in the projects that you really want to do.
Understood. Yes.
I was just wondering is it public comment time now, or are you still
Yes,
in here?
yes,
Okay.
it is.
So, again, Amanda Collmore, Library Street. When looking at the amounts that were discussed before, one of the things I would ask of Catherine, are you able to put in two separate applications potentially? So, I mean, you've said that Bernard has not found lease options for that. Could we do like 180,000 over 15 years, knowing that's the lifespan, and then do one that's over 20 years for the paving and culvert and bridges?
You can do that, yes. The reason why the items are usually lumped together is because the Maine Municipal Bond Bank is there to make money too. So there'll be extra fees because there's two issuances, but that may be, not of an issue if you wanted to be exact on these items, to make people feel better.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else in the audience? Council Frost, please.
It seems like our first step now is we gotta try to determine what are we gonna lump in, right?
Yeah.
Because maybe not everybody agrees with those three items.
So we do need to determine the number that we wish to present to the bond bank. And to come up with that number, we have to determine which items that we choose to go through with. Then, after, if we decided to get all 6 on there for the 2.09 million, then the discussions would be at later council meetings, proposals, details, bids, and such. That's when we would whittle it down. But now we still need to determine, number one, which projects that we decide to continue, if not all. And then, if not all, the amount that we would propose to go to the bond bank with, if any. That's an option also.
I'd like to make one more point.
Yes, please.
Not to be the guy speak.
No, please do.
But in reading the notes here, which we've had discussions before, it sounds like the fire truck, though, it's a possibility of not passing inspection. Nobody right now has said it hasn't passed inspection. So you've still got a truck you can use. And you may be able to just doctor it up and still keep using it. It isn't the best, or it isn't the nice to have, but it's still usable.
That's my take on it, too.
If the SCBA's, if I really correctly remember, he's paying like $40,000 to buy the parts to keep it going. So you're already getting close to a quarter.
Right, either way, the tanks are non-usable.
Right.
After 15 years, they're not
Right,
good.
so you're playing with people that have to use the safety equipment, and you're paying a cost anyways to try to buy the parts to keep them going.
Yeah.
So, I know, that's why I threw that in there.
Yep.
The roads are must, the culverts are must. In fact, I think the roads, you're gonna need to put more money into the roads.
Well, let's not go down that road.
Yeah, I know. Everybody, all about the roads.
I think everyone in this town will be in agreement on that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we've been behind that 8 ball for way too long, and I've been on council before, so I'm just as guilty as
You're never gonna get ahead of it. You're gonna suffer some pain to get ahead of it.
Absolutely are. Yes, Council Jester, please.
Catherine, did you have a chance to take a look at, or do you know quickly, the effect on the mill rate on the 10 versus 20
Yes.
year?
Yes, very good. A mill is 200, let's use it, 200,000 for a mill. Right now it's 225,000, but that went up last year. It's usually 200,000, so let's say it's 200,000. So looking at 10 years of $1.25 million, the first year for our actual payments would be $36,742. So divide that by 200,000. That would give you the impact on the mill rate. For 10 years, if you went to 15 years, which is still applicable for the SCBA, the first year for 2023, very tiny print here, $100,597, that's half a mil for that particular project. If you went with the bond bank estimates for the paving, the bridge culvert work, and the SCBA.
So you're looking at a difference of 0.18 mil?
Yeah, it's very, I was going to say
10 to 15 years.
10 to 20.
10.
Yeah.
10 to 20 year difference.
20.
So,
Your interest rate difference,
Is
though.
that 10 to 20 or 10 to 15?
Yeah.
10 to,
So for your 10 years, you would pay a total of, if the estimates stayed the same, a total of $82,000 rounded off at interest for the 10 years.
Right.
For the 15 years, you would have $183,730 for interest.
My problem with this whole thing, and I don't, maybe I'm all alone in this, is that we just effectively kicked the can again. So we all sit here and admit that if we spend $1.25 million today, we're going to have a bunch of happy citizens on year number 1, and then we're not going to do anything on year number 2, or we're going to again spend another $1 million, and then again spend another $1 million, and then again. I mean, that's not sustainable.
If we don't have functioning brains, we don't learn, we'll do it again. But this is the one thing, and I'll use Heather's term, we gotta build the kitty. We have to do that.
We didn't build the kitty.
It has
We just-
never been.
Right, but we didn't build the kitty. We just spent all the money that we didn't have that wasn't in the kitty. So shouldn't we figure out how to build a kitty before we go out and borrow money?
Right, but by the time we build the kitty to address these items that need to be addressed, we're another 5 years down the road and nothing gets done.
If you look at the paving capital plan there,
Yeah, I did.
yeah, you see it's.
Oh, it's scary.
Yeah, well, there's no way we're gonna ever save to do that.
that's why a shorter term, if we're going to look at this, the shorter term plan
No doubt.
is better because it gives us the opportunity to build that kitty, right? And then start paying out of pocket.
It buys us time at a price.
At a price, but we're paying a much
Less price at 10 than 15.
Yes, yes.
the interest rate.
$100,000 difference that we're paying for 15 and 10.
I pay the 10-year plan.
Right.
You bite the bullet, pay the 10-year plan versus the 20-year plan, you're gonna pay $298,000 worth of interest.
If you do the 20 year, you wouldn't want to include the SVBA's.
Right, that-
They're only good for 15.
Right, exactly. That's why we have a 15-year plan. But for if we do decide that 1.25 million, which is the paving, the road repairs, the culverts, and the SCBA's, at 10 years, $82,000 in interest over 10 years, and that's did we calculate that mill rate for that?
0.68
0.68
for a 10-year.
for 10 years, as compared to the 15, which is another $100,000 that we're paying on the interest.
Right.
And anything more than 15, like you said, you're going to be making payments on the car you sold. So you're still paying off FCBA's that would have been no good 5 years prior.
That's right. I promise there can be frost heave in a road in less than 15 years.
Yeah.
I promise that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure about that, yeah.
Right, exactly.
Are we confident that we can't use the ARPA money to pay for the SCBA's?
I think
Are we confident in that?
We got the legal opinion that no, we can't.
Is that in writing somewhere?
Yes, it's in the email. Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to see what was asked and what the response was. Because everything we've heard is we have all this ARPA money, but we can't use it on anything, so
Well, you
we
can't
just
do-
give bonuses to
Yeah,
people.
well, another what we would think would be logical, the SCBA. To me, that makes perfect sense, but for some reason, that isn't.
Right,
Yeah.
and I mean, the town attorney isn't the end all. We could go to we can go to the MMA and talk to them. We can
Yeah,
get a little more legal counsel on all that money. There's $400.
I guess we could, but what I'm seeing here now is that we have a resolution we need to act upon this evening, based on the calendar dates that the main bond bank requires a submittal by February 9th.
Okay.
And then possible a revised, if we choose to do so, by sometime in April.
So if we agree that we put the SCBA's in this for the 1.25 million,
You could take it
but
out.
in a week or a month we find out, well, we can use the ARPA money for it. We could
Then
take that back out.
we would have $180,000 in there. If we can, before April, we can revise it, take that out, if we can use that money for ARPA, or if we decide to add another, something else in there, like the trucks or anything like that, that's an option. But what I'm saying is, if we put in the $180,000 for SCBA's, it's not a death knell to us if we find out that it can be covered by ARPA. Because worst case scenario, and I certainly don't want to do this, we can't use that money to pay off the loan sooner, so it makes no sense to pay it off sooner because they won't allow it. Invest, something. Because we'd be on the hook for 10 years going with that option. I'm not taking audience, but if it's SCBA, if you can say it in 45 seconds or less.
It was just a clarifying question. From my understanding on SCBA's, you've got a carbon fiber cylinder. The cylinder itself, which is like the $1,000 or $1,500 part, that's the only piece that has the 15-year life cycle.
Exactly. Yep.
The actual expensive backpack part doesn't.
Right, but as Bernard said, they're at that 15-year point, so we have to get the 10.
Yeah, so the cylinders, the $1,000 cylinders, right, instead of the $7,000 pack itself.
Right, that's why they're $9,000 a piece.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Eric. Any other discussion, council? Do we wish to make a motion for the amounts that we want to provide per resolution 2216? This is authorized time to submit a financial application. We do need to know the amount for that financial application. So if we wish to go with the option we have been talking about, 1.25 million for the paving, the bridges, and the SCBA tanks, and I believe the 10-year term is a much better financially, paying off quicker. We still have viable equipment when the loan's done. The mill rate is much less, and it's $100,000 less in interest. I would entertain a motion to make that amendment, if that's what the council chooses to do.
May I ask one?
Yes, Council Justice.
Yeah, one last question. Did you say that the bids that had been offered for the roads had been held for the prices, or are we going to authorize this $1 million only to find out that the first road that we would want to improve, number one on the list that we can afford in that $1 million, now jump to 1.2, and we're stuck sitting on that money without the ability?
Yeah, those weren't official bids or anything. Those were just estimates to give us an idea of what everything costs.
So will we be able to get those estimates done before the date due in April, where we can make adjustments to the price?
All right, so for let's say you borrow $1 million for the paving, there are plenty of roads that can be paved, so there's no way we wouldn't spend the $1 million. There's enough.
Yeah.
No, I was just looking through the numbers here, and I only saw 3 that really fit. In the estimates that were provided, there are only 3 roads that fit inside that budget allowance of $1 million. There was 2 at 900 and some, and 1 at, I believe, 300
Or you can
and some
pave
thousand.
others, whether you reclaim, or you grind the roads, or you use the priority roads, or you even just pave some to sustain them so that they can continue and not be an issue.
But to your point, though, Ron, we do have until some unknown date in April that we can make the revision. We can certainly request that from the time that if we choose to do this submittal to the bond bank by February 9th, from that point until April, we would have a month and a half of getting a little legwork done and maybe kind of refine the numbers, see if they have changed significantly or not.
That's right, because I'd want to borrow exactly the amount of money that we're going to spend.
Because we would have to have that anyway when we get to the point of having that on the next council where where are we sharpening our pencil here? What exactly are we looking at?
So just from the paving plan and the knowledge of the paving here in the community, there's plenty that can be paved. So the $1 million can be spent. You might not spend all of it this summer, but you may have some left over for next spring.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
I'd like to make a motion that we amend Resolution 22-16 to add in the amount of $1,250,000 for a term of 10 years.
And that would be for the 3 items: paving, bridges,
Bridges and the SCBA tanks.
I'll second that.
Okay, there's a motion and seconded to amend the Resolution 2216 for the amount of $1.25 million for a 10-year term to cover the paving, bridges, and SCBA tanks. Any comments or discussion, council? Very well, we're going to be voting on the amendment only, and then we will vote on the resolution as amended. All those in favor of that amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The amendment has passed, so resolution 22-16 now stands as written with the caveat of $1.25 million, 10-year term to include the 3 items for paving, bridges, and SCBA tanks. Any further discussion on that, council? Very well, hearing none, so we will be voting on resolution 2216 with that amendment. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Resolution 2216 passes as amended. Thank you. Catherine, resolution 2217, please.
Yes,
You ready?
resolution 2217. Resolved that the town council authorize the town manager to open a bank account at blank as a holding account for recreation registration fees, receipts for other services, and donations from MyRecCom, execute all required paperwork, and transfer those funds to the town's regular checking account at appropriate intervals.
So I'll look for a motion by the council for move to discussion, please.
Move that we adopt resolution 22-17.
Moved and seconded. Catherine, could you provide some further details on that, please?
Yes,
Thank
very
you.
quickly, I contacted the local banks. 2 submitted proposals, one indicated interest. Basically, Androscoggin Bank had the best rate, it's a small rate, but 0.2 of a percent interest, no fees whatsoever. We'll make all the transfers to the town's account, which they've done with our holding account now for all of the cash, which has been a seamless process. So this would be easy with Androscoggin Bank. And this will allow the MyRec to go forward. Right now, it's being held up the way that the town's financial software is. That whole project was reported on in the town manager's report. The electronics are held up. There are pieces logically, and they're going to try to put together what they can, but a lot of it has not come in yet. Change supply.
Deputy Mayor?
It's your turn.
I'll apply with it.
So we need an amendment.
So we need an amendment then. So we need somebody to make a motion to amend with the
Androscoggin
Bank as being as the account.
Will the discussion from us be after?
Sure.
I'm fine with that.
Yes, we'll do the amendment.
So I'll make a motion that we amend resolution 2217 to include Androscoggin Bank.
Okay. Second.
Second.
Yep. Okay. Now we can open the discussion. Audience. Go ahead.
Amanda Collmore again, Library Street. Catherine, who else submitted for that?
Yes, Banco Savings Bank, there would be a fee after 500 transactions. We may not make that many. And the interest rate was 0.15. And then Bar Harbor, a bank submitted interest. They had a fee structure on a variety of items and some requirements. They had no experience with MyRec, the other 2 banks did. And they were very favorable. They said the towns that have it love it, they love it, it works well.
So in your absence, Mayor, we made a motion to amend to include Androscoggin Bank as the bank of choice.
Very good. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I knew you could do it. Any other discussion? Audience? Council? So the resolution 2217 now stands with Androscoggin Bank as the holding account. So no further discussion from the council. I feel we're ready to vote. All those in favor of resolution 22-17 with the bank account at Androscoggin Bank as a holding account, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Resolution 2217 as amended is approved. Thank you. Catherine, if we go to resolution 2218, please.
Resolution 22-18, resolved that the town council authorize the town manager and cemetery sexton to issue the request for quotations for the purchase of a garden tractor mower.
I'll look for a motion from council, please.
Move we adopt resolution 22-18.
Second. Moved and seconded. Thank you, gentlemen. Any details you'd like to provide on that, Catherine, for discussion or questions?
Yes, a bid spec was put together by the cemetery sexton. This is a project that will be paid for from the trust account on the cemeteries, which is magnificent results, because we're not limited to the regular investments that the regular town funds are, because these are trust funds. Right. So the request for quotations will be advertised in the newspaper, sent out to the different companies, and then the cemetery section will bring in the results for the approval of the town council.
Thank you. This resolution is to approve just going for RFQs only. And as Catherine said, it's not a budget impact because it's run by the funds generated by way of the cemeteries. Any questions or comments? Anyone in the audience? Council? Anything? Very well. Hearing none, since we're ready to vote, all those in favor of resolution 22-18, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Resolution 2218 passes. Resolution 2219, please, Catherine.
Resolution 22-19. Resolved that the town council authorize the town manager to execute the new umbrella cooperative agreement, Maine Department of Transportation cooperative agreement for the funding of aviation projects, non-primary airports, for up to $1 million through December 31st, 2041.
I'll look for a motion from the council, please.
Move we adopt resolution 22-19.
Second. Moved and seconded. Thank you, gentlemen. Any discussions from anyone in the audience? Catherine, do you want to provide some details on this, please?
Yes, this is basically a housekeeping item in which the grants which are received from the federal government will have a state match. The state match is set at 5% now, although the last two grants that we had was zero. Zero from the state and the town. The federal government paid the whole 100% under COVID requirements. However, the application and the agreement is set for a 5% match that will come from the town for all of the grants that are coming through. And this allows the state to give the town the 5% for the projects.
So 5%, the town will be on the hook for up to the $1 million, so that would be...
Well, the $1 million is up to 2041. If the state and town match stayed the same and we actually had that many projects, that would be correct. But this is just to authorize the state monies. So let's say you decided not to go forward and do a grant, there wouldn't be any requirement for a town match or a state match.
Right, but assuming that we would continue through with this, the idea being that we would be interested in doing that. So eventually we'd have to have a number that the town would be on the hook for.
That would be correct. It would be done grant by.
And that would be according to what the letter here, January 15, 2022, from the state of Maine, the DOT, it says, I assume 5% sponsor funds, that would be us as the town would be called the sponsor. Yes. Mm-hmm. So it could be 5% of up to $1 million.
And just so you know, on the $2 million project with the hangar The town's requirement was 75, a little bit over 75,000.
And that's up to $1 million spread from now until December 31st, 2041.
Correct, yeah.
I think it's easily absorbed. Any questions or comments from the audience? Now, when I say audience, I remember I include anyone online, so if anyone online has any questions, please raise your hand or just say no. Very well. Council, questions or comments?
I did have something, but I'm trying to make heads or tails of my hand scratching to myself.
Back to what you're saying, we'd be on the hook for roughly 50 grand if we got the whole million.
Yep, from now until December 31st, 2041, though.
So 50 grand spread over 20.
I'm pretty sure I'll be off the council by then.
So Catherine, on page on page 5, under the termination, it allows either us or them to terminate this agreement with 30 days notice.
Yes.
But then if you go to page 11, under I can't pronounce the word.
Indemnification?
No, under table 1, under the provisions.
On 11. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
So then it has a breach of contract. Is that a dollar amount of $150,000 that would be charged? Am I reading that right or am I wrong?
Breach of contract, no threshold.
So this is the procurement requirements, which is attached as Appendix C. So if the town terminated the agreement, that's not the same thing as this breach of contract.
Okay.
It wouldn't be a breach of contract
Okay.
if we terminated it properly.
Okay. So under the termination, we'd still be eligible to terminate within 30 days?
Yes,
This agreement?
the state and the town.
Okay. Yeah, I was the only question.
All set?
Yeah.
All right. Anything else from the council?
Are we presently making any payments for airport rents now?
We're working on the design work for the airport project. So yes, we're working toward the $75,000 that will be due for the overall hangar. So yes, we just started. That's why we approved it in October. They've been working on the design work and getting everything in order.
You know, how many years is that stretched out for?
So the hangar project should be done by the end of next year. There might be a retainment that goes into the next year, but likely not.
All right, thank you.
Anything else, council? Very well, hearing none, since we're ready to vote, all those in favor of resolution 22-19, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Ayes have it, resolution 22-19 passes. Resolution 22-20, please, Catherine.
Resolution 22-20, resolve that the town council appoint members to fill the vacancies on the various town boards and committees.
I'll look for a motion, council, to set to discussion.
Motion that we accept resolution 22-20.
Second. Moved and seconded. Thank you, gentlemen. In your package, we have a list of two people that are interested. Donna Lux from town is interested to be a library trustee, and Sarah DiMartino for the Parks and Recreation Committee. So I'm always very happy to see people volunteering for any position in any town, especially in Pittsfield. It is our hometown. So I'd be interested to move them along and welcome them into the fold. Yes.
Does this fill all of the vacancies on both of those?
Yes.
Okay.
At this time.
For both the trustees and the Parks and Rec?
At this time, yes.
Okay, very good. Good question. You don't get points, just good question. Anything else from anyone in the audience? Councilors, anything? Questions, comments? Very good. So, hearing no other comments, I will ask for a vote for Resolution 2220 to include Donna Lutz in her first term as a library trustee and Sarah DiMartino for the remainder of a 2-year term for the Parks and Recreation Department. All those in favor of that, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Resolution 22-20 passes as noted. So we'll move on to number 8. Discussion items. There are none. No last minute. Thank you, Catherine. Very good. And we shall go to reports. Anyone in the audience have anything? Ms. Collmore, please. I'd be disappointed if you didn't raise your hand.
First of all, after this big, huge storm that we just had, I think that we should commend our plow people and snow removal people for just how well that they worked to get stuff cleaned up. The one question I have on that is I wondered if we might be having somebody who might finish clearing the sidewalks on Library Street and Manson Street. They kind of stopped right before the corner of Manson Street. Well, I say right before, 2 houses down from Manson Street. I don't know if there was an issue with the equipment, but I know my son needs to utilize that sidewalk to walk to school. So I just, as a safety concern, because that's a school street, could we look into that?
Yes, thank you for letting us know.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate that. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Mr. Hall.
I'll keep it under a minute, I promise. I take it with a grain of salt, but I want to commend you guys for the way you questioned and asked questions and discussed. And for me, anyway, it instills a lot of confidence that we're looking into everything. We're asking questions. We're getting creative, thinking outside the box. That was long, but it was great to see it here. I appreciate you guys doing that. So. And secondly, we talked a lot about, Heather brought it up, stuff. We talked a lot about building up that nest egg and building the capital reserve. We have a lot of, we have the road plans. I've done a little bit of research trying to find our capital plans. But do we have a comprehensive, across the board capital plan where we list every town-owned building and asset and piece of equipment with replacement costs and life expectancy, so we can start, trying to build that nest egg? I know we have some here and there, but every truck and building and computer monitor and photocopier, we must have that list where we depreciate those assets. Have we gone through that process of trying? It's a huge endeavor, don't get me wrong. But
I don't know if we have it to that degree, and if we do have some type of outline, a long-term plan. However, it doesn't seem to be followed as closely as it should. And we, the council, are just as guilty. Because there are items, as H said, there's a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year, especially with the highway. Back in, was it 2017, 18, I think we asked that question. I'm pointing to Heather because we were on that last time on the council together. And that was a very difficult process to go through, but we can't really make decisions on spending so much in these budgets unless we have, okay, what do you plan on 5 years? What do you plan on 10 years? I don't know if we have anything to that degree that Mr. Hall is asking.
So we have the capital improvement plan, which, as Michael has said, we get going and work on it, and then we deviate from it because it's going to cost so much, and then we get back to it again, which we're back to it now. We have fixed assets, but the town, until the last few years, was not considered like a business. So there was no depreciation that took place unless you were in water sewer, which is run as an enterprise in a private sector entity that has depreciation charged. But the other buildings until recently did not have that. So we recently had the auditors put together the fixed assets that are required by the state law, but it's not everything.
Not that our department heads don't have enough on their plate, don't get me wrong, but it seems like, for next budget season, right, if we have each department kind of look at their assets, and I know we've done a great job of that with some of our bigger assets, right? I've seen Bernard's and Steve and Donnie's work that they've done with public works equipment and stuff. It seems like that's going to be an essential piece of building that capital reserve or wherever
We
Mr. Valley is.
had, at the department head meetings and the safety meetings, until we just got so hectic with COVID, had started working on the building inspection, the list of items that needed to be fixed. Until this was all started, and then once we got into the second year of COVID, we sort of went off to cover the workload which increased.
You know, the efforts have been made to, you know, one of the results you see is this walkway out front here. That was considered a safety thing after they inspected the buildings. There was a number of places on this building in particular, I'm thinking on the fire department end, where they had to point and patch a lot of the mortar. You know, that was from that very fact of looking at the buildings, because we don't have one person, okay, you're a facilities director, like the gentleman here was with Chipro.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's it, right? And then that item goes back on the list, saying in 15 years we're going to get that again.
No, you're right, and that's actually probably not a bad idea to look at it. Okay, you know, like Donnie's been the go-to guy for a lot of that. Okay, Donnie, look at the town garage. You know, because I know we talk about lighting there an awful lot. I don't know how the grounds look on that. You know, I know the building. We could take it down and build it.
Huge endeavor. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, oh yeah, it is. You know, if add that to the highway, and no one's going to want to be on the council.
So the projects go, they're submitted after the reviews of the buildings. However, not everything gets submitted. I mean, right now the plan is like $44 million. So, you know, once you keep adding all these things on, everybody scatters. You know, just as Michael says. But yes, this is true. That effort was started when the depreciation charts were required of the town, which was reset. And then in the second year of COVID, we sort of stopped and went off to work on it. So we have like the bones of it.
Okay, great, thank you. All set? Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Here, nothing? Heather, please.
I just have a couple of things. First off, a positive thing, the Maine Cheese Guild had their business meeting, their annual meeting in December, and we gave a report about the Cheese Festival, and the feedback was that they would like to return to Pittsfield again this year in September to come back and have a Cheese Festival again here. So I'll start that process here in the next month or so, give Paul a call and start talking to Cole about permitting and get our committee together. So that is a positive thing for the town again. And just, I just want to make a short remark about the bizarre little ranch swap thing. I would just encourage the council that, you know, if we come up with something like that again, that, you know, we don't do weird stuff like that. That's just so strange that happened. But really, I just want to convey my disappointment, even though it's a great thing for Chimbro. It gives them room to expand for equipment storage and things like that. So it's great for their business. But at the same time, we're always talking about economic development, and we're plunking down a massive storage warehouse in our downtown space, which is a very walkable space. It's close to the library, it's close to the school, it's close to the parks, it's close to the town hall and our emergency services. And that building is now going to be taken up by equipment storage. And it's going to be a very passive space in town versus the opportunity to have that space turned into something that would be much more active space and engaging to the community. So while it's great for Chimbro and it's great for the needs that they have for their business, I don't know that it actually serves the community very well to have that space utilized in that way. And so as we look forward to talking about how do we get new people to come into town, and we're talking about housing and all these economic development things, that we really are mindful of different projects and stuff and what the impact on the community can be. I mean, granted, the building's not being used for anything with storage right now and hasn't been for many years. But certainly, when it was for sale, there was always the potential for it to be a little bit more than that. And that's not going to happen now. So that's a little disappointing to me. But other than that.
All right. Thank you, Heather. I lived at the corner for almost 28 years, 27 years, and it was on the market for at least 20. So, unfortunately, that's a sad fact. But I understand your point. You've talked about that many times at other places. But the plus I see out of the Chimbros being very active, they've been nothing but a fantastic citizen in this town for generations.
Building,
Pittsfield-
building,
Pitts-
tax on it.
Well, get rid of the ugly wooden part. You know, I mean, I think the town is lucky that we haven't had more issues. You know, it hasn't caught on fire by some mysterious fire. You know, so I commend Chimbrow for taking that effort, and it will be a much nicer looking property. Thank you for coming in and spending time then, by the way. Anyone else in the audience? Here, if you have nothing to say. That's unheard of. You're welcome. Thank you. I was going to say that. So we'll go to the council then. No one online has any comments they'd like to bring forth. Bernard, thank you for your comments this evening, by the way. Much appreciated with your input.
You're welcome. Have a good one.
Thank you. You too, sir. So we'll start with Council Hall.
Just wanted to thank everybody for coming tonight. It's good to see pretty good turnout for a public hearing. That's different than usual. So encourage more people to attend and give input. That's how we all kind of bounce ideas off each other and get the best product for the town. So more of the same would be great. That's it.
I agree. Thank you, Jason. Councilor Saucia.
I just want to lead with I think it's important to ask the hard questions, even the unpopular questions at times. Even if it's just for me, it's more educational than anything, honestly. I mean, I haven't been in a firehouse since I was in kindergarten. I mean, I really have no idea what it takes to put a fire out, how many people it takes, how many trucks it takes, how many people it touches. I have no idea. But I think it's important to ask those questions if you don't know the answer, or if you think it deserves a little more digging, you have to do the uncomfortable thing. And budgets is one of those uncomfortable things. I mean, telling someone they can't have what they need or what they want is tough. And I think if you've ever been in that position that you had to tell someone, I mean, even having a conversation with your kids can be tough sometimes. Like, oh man, I'd really like to get this, but you can't afford it. You just can't do it right now. And having that conversation is tough. Whether it's at work, whether it's at home, and I think you got to have those tough conversations and make those tough decisions, because if you think there's no way we can save money in this town, you're crazy. You're absolutely crazy. There's ways to save money. I don't know what it is. You can ask me right now, I have no idea. But there's ways to get creative and save money. We just got to look and dig and don't give up. I mean, I think you just got to keep digging. You can't stop. You can't be passive. That's all I got.
Very briefly.
Very brief.
Council.
On the fire truck, when we get to that point, we can have like a little workshop meeting and go through how the fire station operates in the trucks. And
Oh, I'd love to go. Have Bernard take me right in there and show me what's going on and show me these CBA. We're talking to them every day. I don't even know what this thing practically looks like. I mean, I know it goes on their back and stick something in their mouth. I have no idea.
Great idea.
I think we should be educated when we talk about this stuff, and I really don't have a clue.
Yep.
So.
Hey, Bernard, would you be willing to entertain the councils at a point in the future?
Field trip.
Can I sit in the driver's seat? Rick. The deal's off. Thank you, Bernard. Anything else, Eric?
No.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that. Councilor Jester.
Yeah, I'm going to echo both of their comments and just kind of say thank you for the education tonight. Each person that attended, whether in the audience here in person or online, with what they brought to the table, I got a chance to learn something tonight. I guess what I take away from this the most is kind of some hope tonight, that we have some people that are all willing to make those tough decisions that Eric's alluded to and willing to dig in, and that that people are going to understand, the citizens of Pittsfield will understand that we're here to responsibly represent them, and that we are here to not just spend their money, but here to do it in a responsible fashion. So I say thank you to each person that was here again, and thank you for the education.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you. Councilor Lodgedice, Deputy Mayor Lodgedice. My apologies, sir.
That's no problem. My only comment was, again, to echo thanking the audience for their comments. That's all I have this evening.
Thank you. Councilor Ross.
The only thing I have is I struggle with is how we're ever going to take and trim someplace to save $1 million to fix roads. That's gonna be very tough.
It is. Anything else?
No, that's it.
All right, thank you. Aaron. So, as I mentioned, the gentleman's name is Jack Welch. He was a tyrant that ran GE, but he made GE world class, and GE always went to their customers and requested 5% every year back on budgets. Whether that's reasonable or not, but I think we as a council, and I hate adding any stress or undue hardship to anybody for any reason, especially the people who work so hard for this town. But I would ask that we ask them to look at the budgets probably a little bit differently, a little bit more critical, and look at every line on where can you give us 5% back. 5% doesn't sound like much, but it's going to be difficult for some of them. It really is. And, I could go to Bernie and say, Bernie, you're only going to get 5%. We want 5% back, and, you scratch your head, where's that going to come from? If you ask me to do that on my budget, my home, it'll be tough. I'm sure I can find something, but, I'm not saying we dictate that, but I'm saying we need to look at it a little bit differently and try to, ask for effort on their part. They get the effort that I know that they do. Then we will certainly go all out to make sure they get what they need, because we know that it's true and it's necessary. So I just want to throw that out, food for thought. I'll be very brief, just a couple more things I want to talk about. I just want to acknowledge Tim Nichols again. I think, Catherine, thank you very much for the plaque and what you got from this. Very fitting, very, very excellent, and I will always consider Tim my friend, and I enjoy working with him on the same side of the aisle and across the aisle. We had some interesting discussions, but we always shook hands after, and we were able to do that. Tim was very, very kind doing that. Thank you to everyone in the audience. This is the biggest audience I think we've had since I've been back on the council, the 6 or 7 months. This is fantastic. When I was on it, my 3 other terms, anytime we had one or two people, usually it was Don Hollenbeck and maybe someone else that had something they want to talk about, and that was it. So to have this many people, thank you all very much. And I know everyone online has already left, but greatly appreciated for that. So thinking of what you had mentioned, Heather, having the Cheese Guild back here again, that's fantastic. There's something I had to talk about. I know this isn't the forum, but I want to get people to start thinking about it. Years, and I remember maybe this tall, I remember it was in Vickery, first time I heard that Pittsfield was going to have a egg festival, because at that time Pittsfield was probably the largest in the state, weren't they? At one time? Largest egg producer in the state, right here in this town. One wouldn't know that now, so it made sense to have an egg festival. So, with the outland brewery in town, the small farms that are starting up. I mean, the Balfour farm, and what what they attracted this town for the Cheese Guild. I think we ought to consider. I know it has to do with the Egg Festival Committee, but we ought to consider changing the name to the Central Maine Farm Festival, or something more fitting that includes us more. I hate these words. More inclusive for different industries now. It's changed. It's no longer eggs. So just people start thinking about it. Talk amongst yourselves. So the last thing is take out papers for the council seat. Mr. Hall, I think you'd be a perfect fit for that.
Busy that night.
We can put the 2 brothers together.
Yeah, that wasn't one of my responses I had written down, but yeah, okay. It's more fitting than what I had written. So that's all I have. Thank you all very much for coming. I'll look for a motion for the council.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Perfect. Thank you all very much. Have a good evening, everybody.
Come on, Betty, you want to sit in that seat?
But man, the view's so much different from what we did. I know. Hey, just try the seat out. Just try it out. You have to take it out. Thank you. Appreciate your time. I really appreciate your time.